Listen closely because I know your heart has been shattered before. I know what it feels like when the person destined to love you forever looks you in the eyes and says you're not enough. When your soulmate, the one the moon goddess herself chose for you, rejects the very bond that should have made you whole. This is a story about that kind of pain. The kind that makes you want to disappear into the wilderness and never come back. But it's also about something else. Something that happens when you're brave enough to keep breathing after your world ends. Sometimes, when you think you're completely broken, that's exactly when you become unbreakable. Deep in the Cascade Mountains, where ancient packs guard secrets older than memory itself, Lyra Blackthorne is about to discover that rejection isn't the end of her story. It's just the beginning of something far more dangerous and infinitely more beautiful than she ever imagined. Because some bonds can't be broken by words. Some loves are worth fighting for. And some second chances come with teeth. Welcome to a world where the moon decides your fate, but you get to choose what you do with it. Chapter 1. The rejection hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs as I stood in the center of the Shadowmere Pack's ceremonial circle. The ancient stone markers seemed to mock me with their silent witness as Cale Ravencrest, the man I'd dreamed about since my first shift at 16, looked at me with eyes colder than winter frost. I, Cale Ravencrest, Alpha of the Shadowmere Pack, reject you, Lyra Blackthorne, as my mate. His voice carried across the gathered pack like a death knell. The bond between us is severed by my will and witnessed by the moon. The mating bond, that golden thread I'd felt humming between us for 3 years, snapped with an audible crack that echoed through my very soul. I gasped, clutching my chest as agony unlike anything I'd ever experienced tore through me. It felt like someone had reached into my ribcage and ripped out my heart with bare hands. Why? The word escaped me as barely a whisper, but in the supernatural silence of our gathered pack, it might as well have been a scream. Cale's jaw tightened, and for just a moment, I glimpsed something that looked almost like regret in his storm-gray eyes. But it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. You're not strong enough to be Luna. The pack needs a leader who can stand beside me without being a liability. The words hit harder than his rejection had. Not strong enough. A liability. In front of everyone who mattered, my parents, the elders, the entire pack hierarchy, he just declared me worthless. That's not true. I managed, my wolf writhing in pain inside me. She was whimpering, confused and devastated by the loss of our other half. I've trained my whole life for this. I've proven myself in every trial. Every. Have you? Cale's voice turned sharp, cutting. When the Blood Moon clan attacked our borders last month, you hesitated. 3 pack members were injured because you froze instead of acting like the Luna you claimed to be. The accusation was like a slap. Yes, I'd hesitated, for half a second, when I saw how young one of the attacking wolves was. But I'd still fought. I'd still helped drive them back. I saved 2 pups that night, I said, my voice gaining strength even as my world crumbled. You put emotion before duty. Cale stepped closer, his alpha presence washing over me in suffocating waves. A Luna can't afford that weakness. Not when lives depend on her decisions. The crowd murmured agreement, and I felt their judgment like physical weight pressing down on my shoulders. These people had watched me grow up, had seen me train and struggle, and give everything I had to be worthy of standing beside their future alpha. Now they nodded along as he tore me apart piece by piece. Besides, Cale continued, his voice dropping low enough that only those closest could hear, there's someone better suited for the role. My blood turned to ice as Seraphina Nightshade stepped forward, her perfect blonde hair catching the moonlight like spun gold. The daughter of our neighboring Silverwood Pax Beta, she was everything I wasn't, tall, willowy, with the kind of ethereal beauty that made grown men stumble over their words. She'd been visiting our pack for the past month, supposedly to discuss alliance terms. Now I knew the real reason. Cale and I have discovered we're true mates, Seraphina announced, her voice like honey mixed with poison. The moon goddess has blessed us with a bond far stronger than any forced pairing could ever be. The lie hit me like a physical blow. True mates were rare, but I knew what they felt like. I'd felt it with Kale before he'd closed his heart to me. What he had with Seraphina wasn't the goddess's blessing. It was choice. He was choosing her over me, over the bond the moon had forged between us. That's impossible, I breathed. We're fated mates. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. Sometimes she does. The voice belonged to Elder Morrison, the pack's most respected leader. His weathered face showed no mercy as he looked at me. Perhaps the bond you felt was simply wishful thinking, child. The goddess has clearly shown us her true will tonight. The betrayal of it, having the man who'd helped train me since childhood dismiss me so easily, nearly brought me to my knees. But I forced myself to stay upright, to meet his eyes with all the dignity I could muster. I see. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow and distant. Then I suppose there's nothing left to say. I turned to leave, but Kale's voice stopped me cold. Actually, there is. He paused, and when I looked back, there was something in his expression I couldn't read. You have 24 hours to leave Shadowmere territory. Permanently. The gasps from the crowd were audible now. Banishment was reserved for the worst criminals, for those who betrayed the pack's most sacred laws. To be cast out for simply existing, for being the mate he no longer wanted. Kale, that's excessive. My father's voice cut through the night. Marcus Blackthorne, my pack's head tracker, stepped forward with my mother close behind. Lyra has done nothing wrong. She's a reminder of a mistake, Kale said coldly. As long as she remains in Packlands, she'll be a source of disruption and discord. The Shadowmere pack comes first. Always. My mother reached for me, tears streaming down her face, but I stepped back. If I let her touch me now, if I let myself feel their love and support, I'd break completely. And I refused to give Kale and his perfect new mate the satisfaction of seeing me shatter. 24 hours, I repeated, my voice steady despite the chaos raging inside me. Understood. I walked toward the forest edge, each step feeling like I was walking through quicksand. Behind me, I could hear my parents arguing with the elders, hear the pack buzzing with shock and gossip. But all I could focus on was putting one foot in front of the other until the trees swallowed me whole. I made it exactly half a mile before I collapsed. The sobs came in great, heaving waves that shook my entire body. I pressed my face against the cold earth and let myself fall apart in the darkness, where no one could see. My wolf was howling inside me, a sound of pure anguish that echoed through every fiber of my being. She didn't understand why our mate had thrown us away, why the person meant to love us forever had decided we weren't worth keeping. Neither did I. I don't know how long I lay there drowning in grief, but eventually, the tears stopped coming. My body had simply run out of ways to express the enormity of what I'd lost. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself upright and looked back toward the Packlands that had been my entire world. Somewhere in that direction, Kale was probably already planning his future with Seraphina. They'd have the mating ceremony I'd dreamed of since I was 16. She'd wear the Luna crown that should have been mine, lead the pack that should have been ours together. You want to know something funny? I whispered to the darkness, my voice raw from crying. I still love you. Even after everything you just did to me, I still love you. The admission felt like swallowing glass, but it was the truth. The mating bond might be severed, but 3 years of loving Kale Ravencrest couldn't be erased in a single night. Part of me would probably always love the man I'd thought he was, the one who used to bring me wildflowers after training, who'd held me through nightmares, who'd promised me forever under the last full moon. That man had either never existed, or he died the moment Seraphina Nightshade walked into our lives. Standing up on shaking legs, I brushed the dirt from my clothes and squared my shoulders. I had 24 hours to figure out how to survive the impossible, how to live without the other half of my soul. But as I stood there in the moonlight, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, would always be there, but underneath it was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't have to prove myself worthy of being Kale's mate. I didn't have to worry about living up to his expectations or being strong enough for his standards. I was free to be just Lyra, whatever that meant. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, as I looked up at the moon hanging like a silver coin in the star-scattered sky, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. I don't know who I am without you, I told the moon, my voice growing stronger with each word. But I guess I'm about to find out. Behind me, a twig snapped. I spun around, my heart hammering as a massive gray wolf stepped out of the shadows. For one wild moment, I thought it might be Kale, come to tell me this had all been some horrible mistake. But the scent hit me a second later, unfamiliar and dangerous, carrying hints of pine and storm winds and something indefinably wild. This wasn't anyone from my pack. The wolf's eyes glowed amber in the moonlight as he shifted form, revealing a man I'd never seen before. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the kind of rugged features that spoke of life lived outdoors. Scars crisscrossed his chest and arms, telling stories of battles fought and survived. "You're trespassing on neutral territory," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath my feet. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." I started to back away, but something in his expression stopped me. He wasn't looking at me like a threat. He was looking at me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "You're her," he breathed, taking a step closer. "You're the one from the prophecy." Before I could ask what he meant, before I could even process his words fully, his nostrils flared and his pupils dilated. "Impossible," he whispered. But I could smell it too now, that electric recognition crackling between us. The same golden warmth I'd felt with Kale, but stronger, fiercer, more primal than anything I'd ever experienced. A second mating bond, which should have been impossible. Everyone knew you only got one chance at finding your true mate. The moon goddess didn't hand out second chances to broken-hearted wolves. Except, apparently, sometimes she did. Chapter 2. The man stared at me like I'd materialized out of thin air, his amber eyes wide with something between shock and reverence. The mating bond hummed between us, stronger and more insistent than anything I'd ever felt, even with Kale. It wrapped around my broken heart like a warm blanket, offering comfort I didn't understand and wasn't sure I deserved. "This isn't possible," I whispered, taking a step back. "I was just rejected. The moon goddess can't. She doesn't give second chances." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Trust me, sweetheart, if anyone knows about impossible things, it's me." He ran a hand through his dark hair, leaving it disheveled. "I'm Raven Stormhowl, Alpha of the Cascade Ridge Pack. And you're supposed to be dead." The words hit me like ice water. "What are you talking about?" "The prophecy." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter whatever fragile magic had brought us together. 300 years ago, a seer foretold the coming of a twice-bonded wolf, one who would be rejected by her first mate and gifted a second bond by the goddess herself. She was supposed to unite the mountain packs and restore the ancient bloodlines. I shook my head, backing away further. This was too much, too fast. For hours ago, I'd been preparing for my mating ceremony with Kale. Now I was standing in the woods with a stranger claiming I was part of some ancient prophecy. "You're wrong. I'm nobody special. I gestured helplessly at myself. "I'm just Lyra." I couldn't even keep my first mate from throwing me away. Something dangerous flashed in Raven's eyes. "Who rejected you?" The protective fury in his voice made my wolf purr despite the chaos in my head. She'd been devastated by Kale's rejection, but now she was sitting up and taking notice of this powerful male who looked ready to commit murder on our behalf. "Kale Ravencrest," I admitted. "Alpha of the Shadowmere Pack." He said I wasn't strong enough to be his Luna. Raven's face went thunderous. That pompous ass wouldn't know true strength if it bit him on his perfectly groomed tail. He took a step closer, and I caught his scent more fully, pine and leather, and something wild that made my mouth water. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" I should have said no. Should have run back toward Packlands and begged Kale to take me back, even though I knew he never would. Instead, I found myself nodding. I see a woman who just had her soul ripped in half and is still standing upright, Raven said softly. I see someone who held her head high while her entire world crashed down around her. That's not weakness, Lyra. That's the kind of strength that builds legends. The way he said my name, like it was something precious, made my chest tighten with emotions I couldn't name. You don't know me. No, he agreed. But I'd like to. The sincerity in his voice was almost my undoing. After Kale's cruelty, this stranger's kindness felt like sunlight after a year-long winter. But I'd been burned once tonight already. Why should I trust you? I asked. For all I know, you're just trying to take advantage of a rejected mate. Maybe you think I'll be grateful enough to fall into bed with the first alpha who shows me attention. Instead of getting angry, Raven smiled. A real smile that transformed his harsh features into something breathtakingly beautiful. Fair enough. You want honesty? Here it is. He held up his left hand, and I saw the faint white scar encircling his ring finger like a phantom wedding band. I was mated once. Rejected her when I was 22 and drunk on power. Thought I could do better, that the moon goddess had made a mistake pairing me with someone so ordinary. My breath caught. What happened? She died 3 months later in a rogue attack, he said quietly. Died hating me, and rightfully so. I've spent the last 8 years knowing I threw away the greatest gift I'll ever receive because I was too stupid and arrogant to see her worth. The pain in his voice was real, raw in a way that called to the ache in my own chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. I earned every sleepless night, every moment of regret. His amber eyes met mine. But standing here with you, feeling this bond, it's like the goddess is giving me a chance to make amends. Not just to Elena's memory, but to you. To us. The name hit me like a physical blow. Elena? Elena Mistral? Raven's face went white. You knew her? She was my cousin, I whispered. My mother's sister's daughter. She used to visit us when we were kids. Tears I thought I'd exhausted started flowing again. She wrote to me after your rejection, you know. Said she was going to prove she didn't need a mate to be strong. She was planning to join a pack of unmated females who worked as mercenaries. I know. His voice was barely audible. I tried to find her, to apologize and maybe try to make things right. But I was too late. We stood in silence, both lost in memories of a woman whose life had been cut short by pride and stupidity. Finally, Raven spoke again. I can't bring her back. Can't undo the damage I did, or take back the pain I caused. But maybe I can keep it from happening again. He looked at me with eyes full of desperate hope. The goddess brought us together for a reason, Lyra. I have to believe that. Part of me wanted to believe it too. The mating bond was singing between us, urging me to step closer, to let this stranger hold me until the pain stopped. But the wound Kale had left was still too fresh, too raw. I can't, I said, wrapping my arms around myself. Not tonight. Not after. I need time to think. Disappointment flickered across Raven's features, but he nodded. I understand. But you can't go back to Shadowmere territory, can you? Where will you go? The question I'd been avoiding slammed into me. I had nowhere to go. No pack would take in a rejected mate without serious political complications. I had some money saved, but not enough to survive on my own for long. The human world wasn't an option. Lone wolves rarely lasted more than a few months without pack support. I don't know, I admitted. Come with me. The words tumbled out of him in a rush. Not as my mate, not yet. Just as someone who needs sanctuary. The Cascade Ridge pack has plenty of room, and we don't ask questions about past hurts. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. His voice turned businesslike, professional. We've been looking for a new pack trainer. Someone to work with our younger members, help them harness their wolves. Your reputation preceded you. Before tonight's disaster, everyone knew Lyra Blackthorne was one of the most skilled fighters in the region.
Hope flickered in my chest.
You'd hire me? In a heartbeat. Housing, meals, full pack protection, and a salary that would let you save enough to go anywhere you want if you decide not to stay. He paused. No strings attached. No pressure about the mating bond. Just a job offer and a safe place to heal. It was too good to be true. Had to be. What's the catch? No catch. Well, except for one thing. That devastating smile returned. You'd have to put up with me being around. I have a habit of checking on pack members I care about. The way he said care about made my heart skip. This man barely knew me, but he was already talking about caring for me, protecting me, giving me space to become whoever I was meant to be. It was everything Kale had never offered: patience, understanding, unconditional support. Why? I asked. Why would you do all this for a stranger? Because you're not a stranger. His voice dropped to that low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my bones. You're my mate. And even if you never accept the bond, even if you decide to leave once you've healed, I'll spend every day I have making sure you know your worth. The sincerity in his words was devastating. After hours of being told I wasn't enough, here was a man, an alpha, promising to spend his life proving the opposite. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay, I'll come with you. Just for the job. His smile could have powered the entire mountain. Just for the job, he agreed. But we both knew it was a lie. The mating bond hummed between us, patient but persistent, promising things I wasn't ready to believe in yet. As Raven shifted into his wolf form and gestured for me to follow, I took one last look towards Shadowmere territory. Somewhere in that direction, Kale was probably celebrating his freedom, planning his future with Seraphina. The life we'd planned together was dead and buried. But maybe, just maybe, that meant I was free to discover what life I was meant to live instead. As I shifted and followed Raven into the deeper woods, my wolf's pain began to ease for the first time since the rejection. She could feel the strength radiating from the alpha ahead of us, could sense the safety he offered without demanding anything in return. For the first time in hours, I allowed myself to hope that everything was going to be all right. Behind us, a howl echoed through the night, long, mournful, and familiar. My steps faltered as I recognized Kale's voice in that sound, but I forced myself to keep moving. Whatever regrets he might be having now, it was too late. He'd made his choice. Now I was making mine. Chapter 3. The Cascade Ridge Pack territory was nothing like what I'd expected. Instead of the typical fortified compound with high walls and guard towers, Raven's pack lived in a collection of beautifully crafted log cabins scattered throughout a pristine mountain valley. Ancient pines towered overhead like cathedral spires, their branches filtering the moonlight into dancing silver patterns on the forest floor. It's beautiful, I breathed as we crested the final ridge and the settlement spread out below us. Raven had shifted back to human form and pulled on the clothes he'd tied to his leg during the run. My great-grandfather built the first cabin here in 1847. Said the goddess told him in a dream that this valley would shelter wolves who needed healing. He glanced at me sideways. Seems like he might have been onto something. As we descended toward the main cluster of buildings, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Pack members emerging from their homes, drawn by the scent of newcomers. But instead of the suspicious hostility I expected, their faces showed only curiosity and something that looked almost like recognition. Alpha Raven, called a woman with silver-streaked auburn hair, approaching us with confident strides. We felt you coming. And you brought. She stopped mid-sentence as her eyes met mine, her nostrils flaring as she caught my scent. Oh, blessed goddess. It's really her. This is Dr. Sage Moonwhisper, our pack healer, Raven said, his hand settling protectively on the small of my back. The touch sent electricity shooting up my spine, and I had to force myself not to lean into his warmth. Sage, meet Lyra Blackthorne. The twice bonded, Sage whispered, and suddenly every conversation in the settlement stopped. Faces turned toward us, eyes wide with something between awe and disbelief. The prophecy wolf. Heat flooded my cheeks. We don't know if that's really what this is. It could just be a fluke or... Child. Sage stepped closer, her weathered hands framing my face with surprising gentleness. Her touch carried the warm, medicinal scent of healing herbs and something deeper, ancient magic that made my wolf sit up and take notice. I've been having dreams about you for months. Dreams of a silver wolf with eyes like storm clouds, carrying the power to unite what was broken. Dreams can be wrong, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt the truth resonating in my bones. Something was different about me now, something that had awakened the moment Raven and I locked eyes in the forest. Perhaps, Sage agreed with a knowing smile. But the goddess rarely sends the same dream to 7 different pack seers across 4 states unless she's trying to tell us something important. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. 7 seers? From the Moonlight Bay pack in Oregon to the Desert Winds pack in Arizona, Raven confirmed. All describing the same wolf, the same prophecy. We've been waiting for you, Lyra. Whether you believe it or not. The weight of expectations settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. These people were looking at me like I was some kind of savior, like I held the key to mysteries I didn't even understand. But I was just a rejected mate running from heartbreak, trying to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours, let alone unite entire packs. I need to sit down, I said, my legs suddenly feeling unsteady. Of course. Raven's arm slipped around my waist, steadying me. You've been through hell tonight. Sage, could you prepare one of the guest cabins? Already done, the healer said with a wink. Cabin 7 has been ready and waiting for 3 weeks now. Something told me we'd need it soon. As Raven guided me through the settlement, pack members stepped forward to introduce themselves. Unlike the formal hierarchy of Shadowmere, where every interaction was governed by strict rank protocols, the Cascade Ridge Wolves treated me like family from the moment we met. I'm Marcus Ironwood, head of security, said a massive man with kind eyes and graying temples. My mate Chloe runs our communications network. If you need anything at all, you just say the word. Don't let him fool you with that tough guy act, laughed a petite blonde woman, appearing at his side. He cried for an hour when our youngest daughter brought home an injured sparrow last week. It was a very sad sparrow, Marcus protested, his cheeks reddening as the pack burst into affectionate laughter. The easy camaraderie between them was like nothing I'd ever experienced. In Shadowmere, pack bonds were about duty and hierarchy. Here, they felt chosen, a family of souls who'd found each other and decided to build something beautiful together. Here we are, Raven said, stopping in front of a cozy cabin with a wraparound porch and flower boxes under every window. Home sweet home, at least for tonight. The interior was even more welcoming than the exterior. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a crackling fire already burning in the grate. Comfortable furniture arranged for both solitude and conversation, a kitchenette stocked with basics, and a bedroom that looked out over the forest through massive picture windows. It's perfect, I said, meaning it. After the cold formality of the Shadowmere pack house, this felt like sanctuary. I'm glad you approve. Raven lingered in the doorway, looking uncertain for the first time since I'd met him. I should let you rest. It's been a hell of a night. He was right. I was exhausted in ways that went far beyond physical fatigue. But the thought of being alone with my thoughts, with the memory of Kale's rejection still echoing in my head, made my chest tighten with panic. Stay, I said before I could stop myself. Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone right now. Something soft and vulnerable flickered in his amber eyes. Are you sure? I don't want to pressure you. You're not. I sank onto the couch in front of the fire, pulling my knees up to my chest. Tell me about the prophecy. The real story, not just the basics. Raven settled into the chair across from me, careful to maintain distance while still being close enough to offer comfort if I needed it. The consideration in that simple gesture made my heart ache in the best possible way. The prophecy was given by Sarah Moonweaver, the most powerful seer in recorded werewolf history, he began. She lived during the Great Pack Wars of the 1700s, when the mountain territories were being torn apart by greed and territorial disputes. Families that had been allies for generations were slaughtering each other over hunting grounds and mate rights. Sounds familiar, I said bitterly, thinking of the constant political maneuvering between packs that had dominated my entire life. Sarah saw that the wars would continue for centuries unless something changed the fundamental nature of how packs related to each other. So she cast a prophetic vision, using magic that cost her life to perform. Raven's voice dropped to an almost reverent whisper. She saw a wolf who would be marked by rejection, but blessed by the goddess with a second bond. This wolf would carry the bloodline of the ancient pack founders, the ability to form connections that transcended territorial boundaries. What kind of connections? Alliance bonds. Instead of the typical political marriages and territorial agreements, this wolf could create genuine pack alliances based on mutual respect and shared purpose. Bonds that would be virtually unbreakable because they'd be forged with the goddess's own power. The implications hit me like a freight train. You think I can do that? I think you're already doing it. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. When you walked into our territory tonight, every wolf in the pack felt it. Not just the mating bond between us, but something bigger. Like a missing piece of our family had finally come home. Before I could respond, a commotion outside made us both freeze. Raised voices, running footsteps, and underneath it all, a familiar scent that made my wolf recoil in instinctive fear. Raven was on his feet instantly, his body positioned between me and the door. Stay behind me. The door burst open without ceremony, and Kale Ravencrest strode into my sanctuary like he owned it. He'd shifted back to human form so recently that his dark hair was still damp with sweat, and his eyes held the wild edge of a wolf pushed to his limits. Lyra. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse wrapped together. Thank the goddess you're safe. Get out. The words escaped me as a snarl, my wolf surging to the surface with protective fury. You have no right to be here. I have every right. Kale's alpha presence filled the small space, making it hard to breathe. You're still I'm nothing to you. I cut him off, rising to my feet on shaking legs. You made that very clear in front of the entire pack. I was wrong. The admission seemed torn from his soul. Lyra, I was so fucking wrong about everything. Serafina isn't my mate. She's not even close. She used some kind of artificial scent manipulation to make me think we had a bond. When it wore off an hour after you left, I realized what I'd done. The world tilted on its axis. Serafina had used magic to trick him? That meant. It doesn't matter, I said, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. You still chose to believe her over me. You still threw me away the moment someone prettier came along. I was protecting you. The words exploded out of him with desperate force. The Bloodmoon clan has been sending threats for months, saying they'll target my mate to get to me. I thought if I rejected you publicly, if I made it clear you meant nothing to me, they'd leave you alone. So you decided what was best for me without asking, I said, my voice deadly quiet. You made me think I wasn't good enough, that I was weak and worthless, all to protect me from threats I never even knew existed. I know how it sounds. It sounds like the same arrogant bullshit that's been destroying lives for centuries. Raven's voice cut through Kale's excuse like a blade. I pulled the same noble sacrifice garbage with my mate. Know what it got me? A dead woman and 8 years of regret. Kale's eyes snapped to Raven for the first time, taking in his protective stance and the unmistakable scent of mating bond that surrounded us. You bonded with him already? That's none of your business, I said. Like hell it's not. Kale took a step forward, his wolf flashing in his eyes. You're my mate, Lyra. The goddess chose us for each other. The goddess chose me for him too. I gestured toward Raven, watching Kale's face go white with shock. Turns out she's more generous than any of us realize. That's impossible. Wolves only get one. Mate. I laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Turns out there are a lot of impossible things happening tonight. Kale stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You can't be serious. A second mate bond. As serious as your rejection, I replied. The difference is, Raven didn't have to be tricked into wanting me. He chose me knowing exactly who I am, flaws, weaknesses, and all. Lyra, please. Kale's alpha facade cracked, revealing the man I'd once loved underneath. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back. But we're meant to be together. You have to feel it. The pull between us is still there.
He was right.
Beneath the anger and hurt, I could still feel the echo of our original bond. It was fainter now, damaged by his rejection, but it hummed with desperate longing every time he looked at me. But beside it was something stronger, the golden warmth of the bond with Raven, steady and sure and completely accepting. I feel it, I admitted. But feeling something and acting on it are two different things. Then give me a chance to make this right, Kale pleaded. Let me prove that I can be the mate you deserve. You had 3 years to be that mate, Raven said quietly. 3 years to choose her over politics and image management. You failed. This is between me and Lyra, Kale snarled, his wolf rising to meet the challenge in Raven's words. No, it's not. I stepped between them before the territorial posturing could escalate into violence. This is about me choosing my own future for the first time in my life. And I choose to stay here, with people who want me for who I am, not who they think I should become. The devastation on Kale's face almost broke my resolve. Almost. Please don't do this, he whispered. I love you, Lyra. I know I have a hell of a way of showing it, but I love you more than my own life. If that were true, you never would have rejected me in the first place. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling cold despite the fire crackling nearby. Love doesn't humiliate the person it claims to protect. Love doesn't make unilateral decisions about someone else's safety. I was trying to keep you alive. You were trying to control me. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but they were true, just like you always have. Telling me how to train, how to fight, how to be worthy of standing beside you. It was never about keeping me safe, Kale. It was about making sure I fit into the perfect little box you'd built for your future Luna. Silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths finally dragged into the light. When Kale spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. What can I do? How can I fix this? You can't, I said simply. Some things can't be fixed, Kale. Some mistakes are too big to take back. So that's it? 3 years together, and you're just going to throw it all away. You threw it away the moment you rejected me. I met his eyes with all the strength I could muster. I'm just finally accepting that it's gone. For a moment, I thought he might argue further. Might try to use his alpha power to force me to listen, to come home with him and pretend none of this had ever happened. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and gave me a look I'd never seen before, respect mixed with profound sadness. I hope he makes you happy, he said quietly. Happier than I ever did. Then he was gone, shifting mid-stride and disappearing into the forest like a ghost. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching the trees where he'd vanished, waiting for the relief to hit. I'd just severed the last tie to my old life, chosen my path forward. I should feel free, liberated, ready to embrace whatever came next. Instead, I felt like I'd just ripped out half my heart all over again. Hey. Raven's hand settled gently on my shoulder. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. And as he wrapped his arms around me, holding me while I cried for the second time that night, I almost believed it was true. Chapter 4. I woke to the sound of voices outside my window, not the raised, argumentative tones I'd grown accustomed to in Shadowmere, but the easy chatter of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and for a blessed moment, I forgot where I was and why I was there. Then the memories crashed back like a physical blow. Kale's rejection. The mating bond with Raven. The prophecy everyone seemed to think I was meant to fulfill. Oh, goddess, I groaned, burying my face in the pillow. What have I gotten myself into? A gentle knock on the door interrupted my moment of existential panic. Lyra? It's Sage. I brought breakfast and some clothes that might fit you. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's ceremonial dress that now felt like a costume from someone else's life. The woman who'd put on this dress 12 hours ago had been preparing to become Luna of the Shadowmere Pack. Now she was a refugee with a second mate bond, and apparently some kind of prophetic destiny. "Coming," I called, running fingers through my tangled hair before opening the door. Sage stood on the porch with a loaded breakfast tray and an armful of practical clothing, jeans, sweaters, boots that looked like they were actually meant for walking rather than impressing pack elders. "Rough night?" she asked with a sympathetic smile. "That's putting it mildly." I stepped aside to let her in, and the smell of bacon and fresh coffee made my stomach growl loudly. "Is that real food?" "The realest. Marcus may be our head of security, but he's also the best cook in 3 counties. Says it's impossible to maintain proper pack morale on an empty stomach." She set the tray on the small dining table and gestured for me to sit. "Eat first, then we'll talk about whatever's got you looking like you've been wrestling with your wolf all night." The food was incredible. Fluffy pancakes with real maple syrup, perfectly crispy bacon, and eggs that had clearly been laid by chickens who lived better lives than most wolves. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until I started eating, and soon I'd cleared half the plate. "Better?" Sage asked, refilling my coffee cup. "Much." I sat back, feeling almost human for the first time since the rejection. "Thank you. For the food, the clothes, the kindness. I know having a stranger show up in the middle of the night couldn't have been easy." "You're not a stranger," Sage said simply. "You're pack now, whether you know it or not. And pack takes care of each other." The casual certainty in her voice made my chest tighten. In Shadowmere, pack membership had been about bloodlines and politics, carefully maintained hierarchies that could shift without warning. Here, it seemed to be about choice and acceptance. "Tell me about the prophecy," I said. "The real version, not the sanitized summary Raven gave me last night." Sage's expression grew serious. "You sure you're ready for that conversation? Because once you know the full truth, there's no going back to thinking you're just an ordinary wolf with relationship problems." I thought about Kale's visit, about the way every pack member had looked at me with recognition, about the impossible second mating bond that even now hummed softly in my chest. "I don't think ordinary is an option anymore." "No," Sage agreed. "I don't think it is." She settled back in her chair, her weathered hands wrapped around her coffee cup. Sarah Moonweaver's prophecy was more specific than most people know. She didn't just see a twice-bonded wolf who would unite the packs, she saw bloodline. "What do you mean?" "Your great-great-grandmother was Luna Astrid Blackthorne, the last of the ancient bloodline, wolves who could form bonds with the land itself, who could feel the health of entire territories and guide the magic that flows through pack lands." Sage's eyes grew distant. The bloodline was thought to be extinct. Astrid died without passing on her gifts, or so everyone believed. My heart started hammering against my ribs. "You think I inherited whatever she could do?" "I think you've been doing it your whole life without realizing what it was." Sage leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Tell me, have you ever known things about people you'd just met? Felt the emotions of packmates from across the territory? Had dreams that turned out to be glimpses of the future?" The questions hit me like physical blows. I'd always been unusually intuitive, able to sense when someone was lying or when danger was approaching. The pack healers had called it a useful quirk. My parents had been proud of their daughter's special instincts. "Oh, goddess," I breathed. "That's not normal, is it? Not for ordinary wolves." Sage's smile was gentle but tinged with sadness. "Your parents knew, I think. They've been protecting you from anyone who might want to exploit your gifts. But now that you're away from their protection, now I'm a target." The reality of my situation crashed over me like ice water. That's why Kale was getting threats from the Blood Moon clan. They weren't after his mate. They were after me specifically. Most likely. Ancient bloodline wolves are incredibly rare, and their power can be weaponized under the right circumstances. Sage's expression darkened. Or the wrong ones. Before I could ask what she meant, another knock echoed through the cabin. This time it was Raven's scent that reached me through the door, pine and storm winds and that wild, untamed essence that made my wolf purr with recognition. "It's open," I called. He stepped inside, and I had to bite back a gasp at how he looked in daylight. The harsh lines of his face were softened by morning sunshine, and his amber eyes held warmth that hadn't been there in the darkness. He'd changed into clean jeans and a flannel shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders in ways that should have been illegal. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "I brought the official job offer paperwork, if you're still interested." Paperwork. I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. "I may have had it drawn up 3 weeks ago," he admitted with a sheepish grin. "Right around the time Sage started having dreams about silver wolves showing up at our doorstep." "You prepared a job offer for someone you'd never met based on prophetic dreams?" Stranger things have happened. He settled into the chair across from me, and I caught the way his nostrils flared as he took in my scent. The mating bond pulsed between us, stronger in daylight, more insistent. Besides, the pack really does need a trainer. Our last one moved to Montana when his mate got transferred for work. I scanned the official-looking documents he'd placed on the table. The salary was generous, the benefits comprehensive, and the job description seemed tailored to my specific skills and interests. "This is too good to be true," I said. "There has to be a catch." "No catch." But something flickered in his eyes. Not deception, exactly, but careful omission. "Well, maybe one small thing." I knew it. The pack has some unusual circumstances that new members need to be aware of. Raven glanced at Sage, who nodded encouragingly. "We're not just any pack, Lyra. We're a sanctuary for wolves who don't fit into traditional pack structures. Rejected mates, lone wolves, wolves with gifts that make other packs uncomfortable." "Gifts like mine," I said, understanding dawning. "Among others." He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Would you like to meet some of your potential coworkers?" 20 minutes later, I was following Raven through the settlement with a growing sense of wonder. The unusual circumstances he'd mentioned were unlike anything I'd ever imagined. "That's Dev Nightrunner," Raven said, gesturing toward a young man who appeared to be having an animated conversation with empty air. "He can see and communicate with the spirits of dead pack members. Incredibly useful for tracking and investigation work, but it made his birth pack think he was crazy." "He's talking to ghosts right now." "Probably. The former alpha of his birth pack has some strong opinions about the new leadership structure." Raven's expression grew fond. "Dev's one of our best scouts. The spirits warn him about dangers no living wolf could detect." We continued the tour, and each introduction was more astounding than the last. Twins who could share dreams and memories across any distance. A woman who could shift into any animal form, not just wolf. A man whose wolf was silver instead of the usual browns and grays, marking him as blessed by the moon goddess herself. "This is incredible," I said as we paused beside a training ground where several pack members were sparring. "You've created a safe haven for wolves with extraordinary abilities." "We've created a family," Raven corrected. "Abilities are just the surface. What matters is that everyone here has been rejected or cast out by wolves who couldn't see their worth. Like me." The unspoken words hung in the air between us, and I felt something inside my chest begin to unknot for the first time since Kale's rejection. "There's something else you should know," Raven said quietly. "About why I'm really so invested in making this work for you." My heart skipped. "What?" "The prophecy doesn't just mention a twice-bonded wolf. It mentions her mate, an alpha who would help her unite the packs by offering sanctuary to those who'd been cast out." His amber eyes met mine with devastating intensity. "I've been building this place my entire adult life, Lyra. Gathering wolves with unique gifts, creating the foundation for something bigger. I just never understood why until last night." "You think we're supposed to do this together?" I said, barely breathing. "I think the goddess has been preparing us for each other for years." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "I think every wolf who's found sanctuary here, every alliance we've built, every connection we've forged, it's all been leading to this moment." The magnitude of what he was suggesting made my head spin. Not just a job, not just a mating bond, but a destiny that could reshape the entire werewolf world. "What if I'm not strong enough?" I whispered. "What if I disappoint you the way I disappointed Kale?" "Impossible." Raven's hand came up to cup my face, his touch gentle as butterfly wings. "You know why?"
Why?
Because I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, gifts, flaws, fears, and all. His thumb traced across my cheekbone, and I felt the mating bond flare in response. The woman who stood up to her entire pack last night, who walked away from everything she'd ever known rather than accept being treated as less than she's worth. That woman is more than strong enough for anything we might face. Before I could respond, a commotion from the direction of the main settlement caught our attention. Raised voices, running feet, and underneath it all, the scent of fear and anger. Alpha. Marcus Ironwood's voice boomed across the valley. We've got company. 3 vehicles just crossed our border, flying Blood Moon clan colors. The blood in my veins turned to ice. They found me. Maybe. Raven's expression had gone hard, dangerous. Or maybe they're here for something else entirely. He met my eyes with fierce protectiveness. Either way, you're under my pack's protection now. They'll have to go through all of us to get to you. As we hurried toward the main settlement, I caught sight of the approaching vehicles, sleek black SUVs with tinted windows and the distinctive crimson moon emblems of one of the most feared packs in the region. The Blood Moon clan didn't make social calls. They came for blood, territory, or revenge. And somehow, I suspected all 3 were about to collide in the peaceful valley that had become my sanctuary. Whatever happens, Raven said quietly as we reached the gathering crowd of pack members, remember that you belong here now. This is your home, and we protect our own. The conviction in his voice made my wolf rise to the surface, ready to fight for the family I was only beginning to understand I'd found. But as the lead SUV came to a stop and its doors began to open, I couldn't shake the feeling that our enemies had found us much sooner than anyone had expected. And they'd brought enough firepower to level the entire settlement. Chapter 5. The man who emerged from the lead SUV looked like death given form, tall, gaunt, with silver hair pulled back in a severe ponytail and eyes the color of fresh blood. Scars crisscrossed his pale skin like a roadmap of violence, and when he smiled, his canine teeth were just a little too sharp, a little too long. Damien Bloodmoon, Raven said quietly, his voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that made smart people run for cover. Should have known. You know him? I whispered, instinctively moving closer to Raven's protective warmth. Know him? I've been trying to kill him for 8 years. The casual way Raven said it made my blood chill. He's the one who ordered the attack that killed Elena. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Elena, Raven's first mate, my cousin, had died because of this monster. And now he was here, in our sanctuary, with enough armed wolves to turn the peaceful valley into a war zone. Raven's storm howl. Damien's voice carried across the settlement like nails on chalkboard. You've been a difficult man to find. But then, you always did prefer hiding in the wilderness like a feral dog. What do you want, Damien? Raven stepped forward, his alpha presence filling the air with barely contained violence. Around us, his pack members moved into defensive positions, not the rigid formations I was used to from Shadowmere, but a fluid, organic arrangement that spoke of wolves who'd learned to fight together through necessity. What I've always wanted. Damien's blood-red eyes swept over the gathered pack before landing squarely on me. Justice for the insult your pack dealt mine. And the return of stolen property. Nothing here belongs to you, Marcus Ironwood growled, moving to flank Raven's left side. Doesn't it? Damien's smile widened, revealing more of those unnaturally sharp teeth. Tell me, Alpha Stormhull, what do you know about the woman standing beside you? Dread pooled in my stomach like acid. How does he know about me? Oh, Lyra Blackthorne. Damien purred my name like a curse. Did you really think you could hide from me forever? Your bloodline has been promised to my clan for over a century. That's impossible, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I remembered the gaps in my family history, the stories my parents had always been vague about, the questions they deflected with uncomfortable smiles. Is it? Damien gestured, and one of his wolves handed him an ancient-looking scroll. The Blackthorne Bloodmoon Alliance Pact, signed in 1847 by your great-great-grandfather, Aldrich Blackthorne, and my ancestor, Matthias Bloodmoon. In exchange for protection during the Pack Wars, Aldrich promised that the first female born with the ancient bloodline would be bonded to a Blood Moon heir. The parchment looked genuine, covered in formal script and sealed with wax that bore the unmistakable markings of official Pack documentation. But something about it felt wrong, tainted with the kind of dark magic that made my wolf recoil in instinctive fear. "Even if that's real," Raven said, his voice deadly quiet, "Lyra isn't property to be traded. She has the right to choose her own mate. Under normal circumstances, perhaps." Damien's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "But these aren't normal circumstances."
Are they?
"After all, she's already been rejected by one mate. That makes her damaged goods, so to speak." The casual cruelty of his words sent rage flooding through my system. "I am not damaged, aren't you?" Damien tilted his head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "Cast out by your own pack, rejected by your fated mate, forced to seek shelter among outcasts and misfits. How the mighty have fallen. She's exactly where she belongs." Sage's voice cut through the tension like a blade. The Pack healer stepped forward, her weathered face set in lines of absolute determination. "The prophecy speaks of a wolf who would be rejected by her first mate and blessed with a second bond. Lyra's rejection wasn't a flaw, it was destiny." Damien's expression shifted from amusement to something much more dangerous. "The prophecy." "Yes, I've heard whispers about that particular fairy tale. Tell me, old woman, do you know the rest of Sarah Moonweaver's vision? The part that most Packs conveniently forget." Sage's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "The prophecy doesn't just speak of unity and alliance bonds," Damien said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the settlement. "It speaks of choice. The twice-bonded wolf will have the power to either heal the rift between the clans or tear them apart forever. And that choice will be determined by which mate she ultimately accepts." My heart stopped beating. "What does that mean?" "It means, my dear Lyra, that your decision doesn't just affect your personal happiness. It affects the fate of every Pack in North America." Damien's smile was pure predator. "Choose the wrong mate, and every alliance, every treaty, every bond of friendship between the clans will shatter. The Pack Wars will begin again, and this time, they won't stop until one clan stands triumphant over the corpses of all the others." The weight of his words crashed over me like an avalanche. Not only was I supposed to unite the Packs, but if I made the wrong choice, I could destroy them all instead. "You're lying," Raven said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Am I?" Damien gestured again, and another scroll appeared. The complete prophecy, in Sarah Moonweaver's own hand. "Would you like me to read the relevant passage?" Before anyone could respond, he began to recite in a voice that seemed to echo with ancient power. "When the silver wolf walks between two bonds, her choice shall echo through the ages. Accept the bond of sanctuary and healing, and the clans shall know peace eternal. But choose the bond of blood and vengeance, and brother shall turn against brother until the mountains run red with the tears of the dying." The words hit me like physical blows, each syllable driving home the impossibility of my situation. How was I supposed to choose between mates when the wrong decision could lead to genocide? "The bond of blood and vengeance," I repeated numbly. "That's you, isn't it?" "I am Damien Bloodmoon, heir to a clan that has never forgotten the old ways," he said with obvious pride. "My bloodline carries the power of war magic, the ability to inspire absolute loyalty in battle. Together, we could forge an empire that would span continents." "Through conquest and slaughter," Raven snarled. "Through strength and unity of purpose." Damien's eyes never left mine. The weak clans would submit or be absorbed. The strong would join us willingly. Either way, the constant warfare between territories would end. "Under your rule," I said. "Under our rule. The ancient bloodline and the war magic combined would be unstoppable." He extended one pale hand toward me. "Come with me willingly, Lyra, and I'll spare this pathetic collection of misfits. Refuse, and I'll take you anyway, after I've burned their sanctuary to the ground." The threat hung in the air like a sword ready to fall. Around us, Raven's pack had shifted into combat positions, but I could see the odds. Damien had brought at least 30 wolves, all of them trained killers. We had maybe 20 defenders, many of whom were refugees rather than warriors. How long do I have to decide? I asked. You have until moonrise tonight, Damien said. After that, my patience runs out. And if I refuse? His smile was a promise of violence. Then you'll watch everyone you care about die before I drag you home in chains. With that cheerful threat, he turned and walked back toward his vehicles. But instead of leaving, his wolves began setting up a perimeter around the settlement, a siege formation that would prevent anyone from escaping. Well, Sage said once the Blood Moon wolves were out of hearing range. This complicates things. That's putting it mildly. I felt like I was drowning in the impossibility of it all. A century-old alliance pact, a prophecy that could doom or save every pack in existence, and a psychotic alpha who wants to use me to conquer the world. Did I miss anything? The part where we're not giving up without a fight, Raven said firmly. He turned to Marcus. What's our defensive situation? Not great, the security chief admitted. They've got us surrounded, and our weapons cache isn't designed for a prolonged siege. We've got maybe enough ammunition for a single major engagement. What about evacuation? The old mining tunnels. Blocked, another pack member called out. They've got wolves stationed at every exit point. The tactical discussion continued around me, but I barely heard it. My mind was reeling with the implications of everything Damien had revealed. If the prophecy was real, if my choice really could determine the fate of every pack in North America, then this wasn't just about my personal happiness anymore. Lyra. Raven's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts. Hey, look at me. I met his amber eyes, seeing determination and something deeper, a love so fierce it took my breath away. Whatever that prophecy says, whatever impossible choice you're supposed to make, we'll figure it out together, he said. You don't have to carry this alone. But what if I choose wrong? The words came out as barely a whisper. What if my happiness costs thousands of lives? Then we'll find another way. His hands framed my face, grounding me in the present moment. The prophecy talks about two choices, but it doesn't say those are the only options. Maybe there's a third path, one nobody's considered yet. Like what? I don't know. But I have faith in you, Lyra. In us. The woman who stood up to her entire pack and walked away from everything she'd ever known doesn't give up when things get complicated. His absolute confidence in me was both terrifying and intoxicating. Here was a man who believed I could find a solution to an impossible problem, who trusted me to make the right choice even when the stakes were literally life and death. There's something else, Sage said quietly. Something about the prophecy that Damien either doesn't know or chose not to mention.
What?
Sarah Moonweaver was known for layered visions, prophecies with multiple meanings depending on how you interpreted them. The healer's eyes were bright with possibility. What if the bond of blood and vengeance doesn't refer to Damien at all? My heart skipped. What do you mean? You have two mates, Lyra. Raven, who represents sanctuary and healing, and Kale, who... She paused, looking thoughtful. Who rejected you in front of his entire pack, humiliated you publicly, caused you pain that will echo through your heart for the rest of your life. You think Kale is the bond of blood and vengeance? I asked, the idea hitting me like lightning. Think about it. Which choice would be more likely to tear the packs apart, accepting Damien, who everyone already sees as a monster, or choosing the alpha who publicly rejected you, proving that even fated mates can be discarded when they become inconvenient? The implications were staggering. If Sage was right, then the choice I'd already made, walking away from Kale and accepting Raven's bond, had potentially saved the werewolf world from civil war. But that means... I started. That means you've already chosen correctly, Raven finished, his voice filled with wonder. The bond of sanctuary and healing. The choice that leads to peace eternal. For the first time since Damien's arrival, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe we weren't as trapped as I'd thought. Maybe there was a way out of this that didn't require me to sacrifice either my happiness or the safety of every pack in North America. But even as relief flooded through me, a new complication emerged from the tree line. Kale Ravencrest stepped into the settlement clearing, flanked by a dozen Shadowmere warriors. His storm-gray eyes swept over the Blood Moon siege positions before finding mine across the chaos. "Lyra," he called, his voice carrying easily across the distance. "We need to talk." And just like that, both of my mates were in the same place at the same time, with an army of hostile wolves surrounding us and a prophecy hanging over our heads that could determine the fate of the entire werewolf world. This was either going to be the moment everything finally made sense, or the moment it all fell apart completely. Chapter 6. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Kale approached our defensive position. His Shadowmere warriors spread out behind him, not in an attacking formation but not exactly peaceful either. Every wolf in the settlement was on high alert, caught between 3 different alpha powers and not sure which way the wind was going to blow. "This is a private conversation," Damien Bloodmoon called from his position near the vehicles. "I suggest you leave before you complicate an already delicate situation." "I'm not going anywhere," Kale replied, never taking his eyes off me. "Not until I've said what I came here to say." "Kale, this isn't the time," I started. "Actually, it's exactly the time." He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough that I could see the exhaustion and desperation in his storm-gray eyes. "Because if I don't say this now, I might never get another chance." Raven moved closer to my side, his protective instincts triggered by having another alpha male in his territory. The mating bond between us flared with possessive heat, but underneath it, I could feel his confusion. He'd expected to face Damien's threat, not navigate a 3-way supernatural soap opera. "You have 5 minutes, Raven said coldly. "Then you and your wolves leave my territory." "Fair enough." Kale's attention focused on me with laser intensity. "Lyra, I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. I know the rejection hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I need you to know the truth, all of it." "The truth?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Which version this time? The one where you were protecting me from threats I didn't know about? Or the one where you were just an arrogant ass who thought he could do better?" "Both," he said simply. "And neither." Before I could ask what that meant, he pulled out a small leather journal and held it up for everyone to see. "This belonged to my father," Kale continued. "Alpha Thomas Ravencrest, who died when I was 15. I found it 3 days ago, hidden behind a loose stone in his study. It contains entries dating back 20 years, including detailed correspondence with Damien Bloodmoon." The journal changed everything. Suddenly, every wolf in the clearing was focused on Kale with razor-sharp attention. "That's impossible," I breathed. "Your father would never have worked with the Bloodmoon clan." "Wouldn't he?" Kale's voice was bitter. "Read this entry, dated 6 months before my birth. Damien has agreed to the terms. The Blackthorne girl will be delivered to his clan when she comes of age, in exchange for the territory expansion and the artifacts of power. The alliance between our packs will remain secret until the exchange is complete." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "Your father made a deal with Damien? About me?" "Not just about you. About your entire bloodline." Kale flipped through several pages. "According to this, the Ravencrest pack has been secretly allied with the Bloodmoon clan for over 2 decades. My father helped them track ancient bloodline descendants, provided intelligence about pack movements, even arranged for strategic attacks that would weaken their enemies." "That's why you rejected me," I said, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. "Not to protect me from Damien, to deliver me to him." "No." The denial exploded out of him with desperate force. "I didn't know about any of this until 3 days ago. I rejected you because I'm an idiot who believed his advisors when they said you weren't strong enough for the Luna position. But now I understand why they were pushing so hard for the rejection." He gestured toward the Bloodmoon positions. "My pack is compromised, Lyra. Half my inner circle are Damien's agents, including Elder Morrison. They've been manipulating pack politics for years, steering me toward decisions that would benefit the Bloodmoon clan." The revelations kept coming like hammer blows. Elder Morrison, the man who'd helped train me since childhood, was working for the enemy. The rejection hadn't been about my worth as a potential Luna, It had been about delivering me to a monster. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I need you to understand that when I rejected you, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was being manipulated by people I trusted, fed lies about your abilities and your loyalty." His voice cracked. "But also because you deserve to know the truth before you make your final choice." My final choice. Kale looked directly at Damien, his alpha power flaring in challenge. "I know about the prophecy, Damien. The real one, not the twisted version you're peddling. And I know what you're really after." "Do you?" Damien's voice carried amusement, but I caught the undercurrent of tension. "Enlighten us. You're not just trying to claim Lyra as a mate. You're trying to corrupt the ancient bloodline." Kale held up the journal again. "According to my father's notes, you've been searching for a bloodline descendant for decades. Not to unite the packs, but to break the bonds that hold them together. You want to use her power to shatter every alliance, every treaty, every connection between the clans." "An interesting theory," Damien said, "but ultimately irrelevant. The Alliance Pact guarantees me the right to claim her." "Actually, it doesn't." Sage stepped forward, her healer's knowledge suddenly seeming a lot more comprehensive than I'd realized. "I've been researching Alliance Pact since you arrived, and there's a clause you seem to have overlooked." She produced her own scroll, this one looking much more official than Damien's. "The Supernatural Accord of 1823, signed by every major pack in North America. It specifically states that no wolf can be forced into a mating bond against their will, regardless of previous agreements or bloodline obligations." "That accord was superseded by nothing," Sage interrupted firmly. "It's still binding law, which means Lyra has the absolute right to reject your claim, regardless of what your ancestor negotiated with hers." The legal technicality hung in the air like a lifeline. But even as hope flickered in my chest, I could see the murder in Damien's blood-red eyes. "Law is a luxury for those with the power to enforce it," he said quietly. "I have 30 warriors. You have 20. The math is simple." Actually, a new voice interrupted from the forest edge. "You might want to recalculate." My heart nearly stopped as a massive silver wolf emerged from the trees, followed by another, then another. Within moments, the clearing was surrounded by the largest gathering of wolves I'd ever seen, easily 60 animals, all bearing the distinctive markings of different packs. The silver wolf in the lead shifted form, revealing a woman I recognized from pack politics gatherings, Luna Arya Moonstone of the Northwest Alliance. "The Supernatural Council has been monitoring this situation," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We received word of an ancient bloodline descendant being threatened, and we decided to investigate." "This is pack business," Damien snarled, but I could see the uncertainty in his posture. Whatever force he'd brought, it was nothing compared to the united might of the Alliance. "Threatening the life of a prophecy wolf affects every pack in North America," Luna Arya replied coolly. "That makes it council business." She turned to me, her expression softening slightly. "Lyra Blackthorne, the council formally recognizes your right to choose your own mate, free from coercion or threats. Any attempt to force you into an unwanted bond will be considered an act of war against the Alliance." The relief was overwhelming, but it came with a price. Every eye in the clearing was now focused on me, waiting for a decision that would echo through the supernatural world for generations. "I need a moment," I said, my voice barely steady. "Take all the time you need," Luna Arya assured me. "But understand that your choice here will be witnessed by representatives of every major pack. There will be no question about its legitimacy." I looked at my 3 options: Damien, representing power and conquest through fear; Kale, offering redemption and the familiar comfort of our shared history; and Raven, who'd given me sanctuary when I had nowhere else to go. But as I stood there, surrounded by the most powerful wolves in North America, I realized something that changed everything. The choice wasn't really about which mate to accept. It was about which version of myself I wanted to become. The woman who would rule through fear and conquest? The one who would forgive past betrayals for the sake of familiar love? or the one who would forge a new path entirely, building something beautiful from the ashes of what came before? I've made my decision, I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the clearing. The silence was absolute, as every wolf waited to hear the words that would shape the future of our world. Damien Bloodmoon, I said, meeting his blood-red eyes without flinching. I reject your claim on me, your alliance pact, and everything you represent. You have no power over me or my bloodline. His face twisted with rage, but before he could respond, I continued. Kale Ravencrest, I understand why you did what you did, and I forgive you for the pain you caused. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to what we had before. Kale's shoulders sagged with defeat, but he nodded with dignity. Finally, I turned to Raven, whose amber eyes held nothing but love and patient understanding. Raven Stormhowl, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I accept you as my mate, my partner, and my equal. Not because prophecy demands it, not because I have no other choice, but because you saw me at my worst and chose to believe in my best. The mating bond flared between us like wildfire, and this time I didn't fight it. I let it fill every empty space in my heart, let it heal the wounds that Kale's rejection had left behind. However, I continued, raising my voice so every wolf in the clearing could hear, I'm not just choosing a mate today. I'm choosing a future for all of us. I gestured toward the gathered Alliance wolves, then toward Raven's pack of misfits and refugees. The prophecy speaks of unity, but it doesn't specify what kind. I propose something new, not conquest or absorption, but true alliance. A network of packs working together while maintaining their independence. A place where wolves with unusual gifts are celebrated, not shunned. A world where strength is measured by the lives we protect, not the enemies we defeat. The idea hung in the air like a challenge. It was audacious, unprecedented, and probably impossible. It was also exactly what the world needed. The Cascade Ridge Pack formally offers sanctuary to any wolf seeking a new beginning, Raven added, understanding immediately what I was proposing. No questions asked, no judgment rendered. The Northwest Alliance supports this proposal, Luna Arya said after a moment of consideration. We've seen too much bloodshed in the name of old grudges. One by one, the other pack representatives voiced their agreement. Not universal support. Change never came easily, but enough to make it real. Damien's face had gone white with fury, but surrounded by 60 Alliance wolves, he had no choice but to retreat. This isn't over, he snarled as he stalked toward his vehicles. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. The old ways are dead, Damien. What rises from their ashes will be something you can't control or corrupt. As the Blood Moon vehicles disappeared into the forest and the Alliance wolves began to disperse, I felt a hand slip into mine. Raven's fingers intertwined with mine, strong and warm and absolutely right. So, he said with a grin that could have powered the entire mountain. Ready to change the world, mate? I looked around at the pack of extraordinary wolves who'd become my family, at the Alliance representatives already discussing logistics for the new sanctuary network, at the future spreading out before us like an unwritten book.
Bring it on, I said.
And deep in my chest, where the mating bond hummed with perfect contentment, I felt my wolf settling into place for the first time in my life. I was exactly where I belonged. Chapter 7. 3 days after the confrontation with Damien, the Cascade Ridge settlement buzzed with activity that had nothing to do with supernatural politics. Alliance representatives had been arriving steadily, bringing wolves seeking sanctuary and discussing the logistics of our new network. But despite the excitement of building something revolutionary, I found myself struggling with a different kind of challenge entirely. The mating bond with Raven was stronger than anything I'd ever experienced, but I had no idea how to navigate it. You're thinking so loud I can hear you from the next valley, Sage said, settling beside me on the porch of my cabin with 2 steaming mugs of tea. Want to talk about what's got you tied up in knots? I accepted the mug gratefully, inhaling the soothing blend of chamomile and something else I couldn't identify. Is it that obvious? Honey, you've been avoiding your mate for 3 days. In a settlement this small, That takes some serious effort. Sage's weathered face creased with gentle humor. What's really going on? The question I'd been dreading hung in the air between us. How could I explain that I was terrified of my own happiness? That after years of being told I wasn't enough for Kale, I couldn't quite believe that Raven actually wanted me for who I was? I don't know how to do this, I admitted. The mating bond with Kale developed slowly over months. This thing with Raven, it's like wildfire. Intense and consuming and completely out of my control. And that scares you. Terrifies me. I took a sip of tea, letting the warmth settle my nerves. What if I'm just rebounding? What if this bond feels so strong because I'm desperate to feel wanted after being rejected? Sage was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those knowing eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. Can I tell you something about mating bonds that most wolves don't understand? I nodded. They're not about perfection. They're not about finding someone who completes you or fixes all your problems. She gestured toward the settlement, where wolves from a dozen different packs were working together to build something unprecedented. They're about finding someone who sees your flaws and chooses to love you anyway. Someone who makes you want to become the best version of yourself. But how do I know if what I'm feeling is real? Because you're asking the question. Sage smiled. Wolves who are just rebounding don't worry about whether their feelings are genuine. They throw themselves into the first available comfort and hope for the best. You're taking the time to examine your heart, to make sure you're making choices for the right reasons. Before I could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps made us both look up. Raven emerged from the forest, his clothes dirty and his hair disheveled from whatever pack business had kept him busy all day. But when his amber eyes found mine, they lit up with a warmth that made my chest tighten. "Evening, ladies," he said, settling into the chair across from us. "Mind if I join you?" "Actually," Sage said, standing with suspicious swiftness, "I just remembered I promised to help Marcus with dinner preparations. You two enjoy the sunset." She disappeared into the settlement before either of us could protest, leaving Raven and me alone with the weight of everything unspoken between us. "She's about as subtle as a freight train," Raven observed with a grin. "She means well." I fidgeted with my tea mug, suddenly hyper-aware of how close he was, how his scent made my wolf purr with contentment. "How did the Alliance meetings go?" "Better than expected. We've got commitments from 12 packs to establish sanctuary outposts, and the Northwest Alliance is offering funding for the first year of operations." His expression grew serious. "But that's not what I came to talk about." My heart skipped. "What did you want to talk about?" "Us." The simple word carried weight that seemed to settle around us like a blanket. Specifically, the fact that my mate has been avoiding me for 3 days, and I'm starting to think I did something wrong. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said quickly. "It's not about you. It's about me and my own insecurities and Lyra." His voice was gentle but firm. "Talk to me.
Please."
"Whatever's going on in that beautiful head of yours, we can work through it together." The sincerity in his voice was my undoing. All the walls I'd built up over the past 3 days crumbled under the weight of his patient understanding. "I'm scared," I whispered. "Scared that this is too good to be true. Scared that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake choosing me. Scared that I don't know how to be someone's mate without losing myself in the process." Raven was quiet for a long moment, processing my words with a careful consideration that was so uniquely him. When he spoke, his voice was soft but absolutely certain. "Can I show you something?" I nodded, and he extended his hand. The moment our skin touched, the mating bond flared to life between us. But this time, instead of the overwhelming rush I'd been fighting, I felt something else.
Peace.
Contentment. The sense of coming home to a place I'd never known I was searching for. "This is what I feel when I look at you," he said quietly. "Not desperation or possession or some need to fix you. Just rightness. Like everything in my life led me to this moment, to you. But what if? What if the moon falls out of the sky?" He moved to the chair beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "What if the ocean decides to flow uphill? What if all the impossible things happen at once? Despite my fears, I found myself smiling. That's not the same thing, isn't it? You're borrowing trouble from a future that doesn't exist yet. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. I can't promise you that we'll never fight or that I'll never make mistakes. But I can promise you that I will choose you every single day for the rest of my life. The simple declaration hit me harder than any grand romantic gesture could have. This wasn't about passion or destiny or supernatural bonds. It was about choice, the conscious decision to love someone despite their flaws, to build something beautiful together one day at a time. I want to try, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. To trust this, to trust us. But I need you to be patient with me while I figure out how. I've got nothing but time, he assured me. And Lyra, you don't have to lose yourself to be my mate. I fell in love with exactly who you are, stubborn, fierce, independent, and strong enough to walk away from everything you'd ever known when it wasn't serving you anymore. The mating bond pulsed between us, but this time I didn't fight it. I let it wash over me, let it fill the empty spaces that Kale's rejection had left behind. And for the first time since the whole mess started, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed.
Hope.
So, Raven said, his voice taking on a lighter tone, does this mean you'll stop hiding from me? I wasn't hiding, I protested. You climbed out a window yesterday to avoid walking past my cabin. Heat flooded my cheeks. You saw that? Sweetheart, I'm an alpha. I notice when my mate is scaling buildings to avoid me. His grin was pure mischief. Though I have to admit, your technique was impressive. I have many hidden talents, I said, surprising myself by flirting back. I'm looking forward to discovering all of them. The promise in his voice made my wolf sit up and take notice. But for now, how about we start with something simple? Like maybe eating dinner together without you making excuses to leave early? I think I can manage that. Good. He stood and offered me his hand. Marcus made his famous elk stew, and if we don't get there soon, the younger pack members will have eaten it all. I took his hand, letting him pull me to my feet. But before we could head toward the main hall, a commotion from the settlement's entrance caught our attention. What now? I muttered, thinking we'd had enough drama for 1 week. But the wolves approaching weren't enemies. They were refugees, a small group of women and children, their clothes dirty and their faces gaunt with exhaustion. Leading them was a woman I recognized from pack gatherings, though I couldn't place her name. Alpha Stormhowl, she called, her voice cracking with relief. We seek sanctuary. Granted, Raven replied immediately, his alpha authority wrapping around the group like a protective blanket. What pack are you from? Silverwood, the woman replied, and my blood ran cold. That was Seraphina's pack, the one that had supposedly formed an alliance with Shadowmere through her mating with Kale. What happened? I asked, stepping forward. The woman's eyes widened as she recognized me. Luna Lyra? But we were told you were dead. Told by whom? Alpha Nightshade and his daughter. They said you'd been killed by rogues after your ejection from Alpha Ravencrest. Tears began streaming down her face. They used your death to justify the war. What war? Raven's voice had gone deadly quiet. The Silverwood Shadowmere Alliance launched an attack on the Moonlight Bay Pack 3 days ago, the woman said. They claimed the Bay Pack was harboring your killers. The fighting has been brutal, dozens of wolves dead on both sides. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been finding sanctuary and falling in love, Seraphina and her father had been using my supposed death to justify a war that would destabilize the entire region. Where's Kale in all this? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Under house arrest, the woman replied. Alpha Nightshade claims he's suffering from grief-induced madness. Seraphina has been acting as regent, making all the military decisions. Son of a bitch, Raven snarled. She played him perfectly. Got rid of you, isolated him, and now she's using his pack's resources to wage her own private war. We have to stop this, I said, my mind already racing through possibilities. If the Alliance thinks I'm dead, They'll respond to the attacks with everything they have, Raven finished. This could spiral into the pack wars all over again. Around us, the settlement was buzzing with alarm as word of the conflict spread. Pack members who'd found sanctuary here just days ago were now facing the possibility that their new home could become a target. "What do you need from us?" Marcus asked, appearing at Raven's side with several other pack members. "Information first," Raven replied. "Then we plan." But even as the tactical discussions began, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Somewhere out there, Seraphina Nightshade was using my name to justify atrocities, and Kale was trapped in the middle of a web he probably didn't even understand. The simple happiness I'd been building with Raven suddenly felt very far away. "This is what Damien was counting on," I said quietly. "The chaos. The breakdown of alliances. Even without me, he's still getting what he wanted." "Not if we stop it," Raven said firmly. "Not if we show the world that you're alive and that there's another way."
How?
His smile was fierce and completely confident. "By doing what we do best, sweetheart. By giving sanctuary to those who need it and building something better from the ashes of what came before. Even if it means going to war?" "Especially then." His hand found mine, the mating bond flaring with shared determination. Because sometimes peace requires fighting for it. As the sun set over the mountains and the settlement prepared for whatever came next, I felt the last of my doubts about the mating bond fade away. Raven wasn't just my mate. He was my partner in every sense of the word, ready to stand beside me against whatever challenges lay ahead. But somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear the drums of war beginning to beat. And I knew our greatest test was still to come. Chapter 8. The war council that convened in Raven's cabin at dawn was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Representatives from 8 different packs sat around a massive oak table, their faces grim as they processed the intelligence our refugees had brought. "The situation is worse than we initially thought," Luna Aria reported, her normally composed demeanor showing cracks of strain. "Seraphina Nightshade has convinced 3 neighboring packs that the Moonlight Bay pack murdered you in cold blood. They're calling it the Blackthorne Massacre and using it to justify a full-scale territorial war." "How many casualties so far?" Raven asked, his alpha presence filling the room with controlled authority. 43 dead, over 100 wounded," Marcus replied, consulting his notes. "And those are just the confirmed numbers. The fighting has been spreading outward from the original conflict zone." I stared at the tactical map spread across the table, red pins marking battle sites and casualty reports. 43 wolves dead, because Seraphina had decided to use my supposed death as a weapon. The weight of that responsibility settled on my shoulders like lead. "There's something else," said Beta Rodriguez from the Desert Winds pack. "We've been monitoring communications between the warring factions. Seraphina isn't just coordinating military strikes, she's been negotiating with mercenary packs, offering them territorial concessions in exchange for support." "Mercenaries?" Luna Aria's voice sharpened. "Which ones?" "The Crimson Fong Brotherhood and the Iron Claw Syndicate, among others." Rodriguez's expression was grave. "Wolves with no allegiance except to whoever pays them best. She's turning this into something much bigger than a regional conflict," I said, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. "She's creating a power vacuum that will destabilize the entire alliance structure. And guess who benefits when the alliance falls apart?" Raven's voice was deadly quiet. "Damien Bloodmoon," I whispered. "He doesn't need to capture me if the pack system destroys itself." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Seraphina wasn't just waging war for personal gain. She was following a playbook that would ultimately serve the Bloodmoon clan's interests. "We need to get word to the Alliance that Lyra is alive," Luna Aria said. "Once they know the Blackthorne Massacre is a lie." "It won't matter," interrupted Dev Nightrunner, the pack's spirit seer. His usually cheerful demeanor was nowhere to be seen as he sat rigidly in his chair. "The spirits of the dead are trying to warn us about something, but their messages are fragmented." "What kind of warnings?" Raven asked. "Something about blood magic and binding rituals." Dev's eyes went unfocused for a moment, as if he was listening to voices the rest of US couldn't hear. The spirit of your father is particularly agitated, Alpha. He keeps saying, the ritual must not be completed. A chill ran down my spine. What ritual? I don't know, Dev admitted. But whatever it is, it requires the death of an ancient bloodline descendant during a time of maximum chaos and violence. The pieces clicked together in my mind like a horrifying puzzle. Serafina isn't trying to kill me, I said slowly. She's trying to get me to reveal myself. To force me into a position where I'll have to expose my location to stop the war. And then, Raven's voice was tense. Then she captures me and completes whatever ritual Damien has planned. I stood up from the table, pacing to the window as my mind raced. The war isn't the end goal, it's bait. She's counting on my sense of responsibility to draw me out of hiding. Well, it's working, Marcus observed grimly. Because we can't let this conflict continue, not when we have the power to stop it. It's a trap, Raven said firmly. The moment Lyra reveals herself publicly, every enemy we have will know exactly where to find her. And if I don't, innocent wolves keep dying because of a lie. I turned back to face the council. How many more casualties are acceptable? How many wolves have to die to keep me safe? The question hung in the air like a challenge. These were good people, wolves who'd spent their lives protecting others. But they were also practical leaders who understood that sometimes individual sacrifice was necessary for the greater good. There might be another way, Sage said quietly from the corner where she'd been observing. Something that doesn't require Lyra to expose herself directly. What do you have in mind? Luna, Arya asked. The mating bond. Sage's eyes gleamed with possibility. Ancient bloodline wolves can share their abilities through the mate bond, especially during times of high emotional resonance. If Lyra could project her presence through Raven, I could appear at multiple locations simultaneously. I breathed, understanding immediately. Show myself to enough wolves to prove I'm alive, but not give away our actual position. Is that even possible? Raven asked. Only one way to find out. I moved to his side, taking his hand and feeling the familiar warmth of the mating bond. But it would require complete trust between us. No barriers, no holding back. You have to let me into your mind completely. The intimacy of what I was proposing went far beyond anything we'd shared so far. It would mean opening ourselves to each other in ways that most mated pairs never experienced, creating a connection that could never be fully severed. Do it, Raven said without hesitation. Whatever you need from me, it's yours. The bond sharing will be strongest at moonrise, Sage said. But there's something else we need to consider. If Lyra projects herself through multiple pack territories simultaneously, it's going to attract attention from more than just the warring factions. Damien, I said grimly. Among others. Every wolf with supernatural abilities for 100 miles will feel that kind of power surge. Sage's expression was troubled. We need to be prepared for the possibility that revealing yourself this way will force a final confrontation. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for it. Raven turned to address the council. I want defense plans for every possible approach to the settlement. Emergency evacuation routes for non-combatants. And get word to our allies, if this goes sideways, we're going to need backup. As the council dispersed to make preparations, I found myself alone with Raven for the first time since the crisis began. The weight of what we were about to attempt settled between us, heavy with possibility and danger. Are you sure about this? I asked. Once we create this kind of bond, there's no going back. You'll be connected to me, to my abilities, to all the dangers that come with the ancient bloodline. Good, he said simply. I don't want there to be a way back. I want to be connected to you in every possible way. The certainty in his voice made my heart clench. Here was a man who'd seen me at my lowest point and chosen to stand with me anyway, who was willing to risk everything to help me save wolves I'd never even met. I love you, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His smile was brilliant. I love you too. Have since the moment you looked me in the eyes and refused to apologize for being exactly who you are. Even if who I am gets us all killed. Especially then. He pulled me into his arms, and I could feel the mating bond humming between us with anticipation. Because who you are is someone worth dying for. Someone worth living for. Someone worth building a future with, no matter how complicated it gets. As the sun climbed toward its zenith and the settlement buzzed with preparation around us, I let myself believe that we might actually survive what was coming. That love and determination and the bonds we'd built might be enough to overcome the forces arrayed against us. But deep in my bones, I could feel the approaching storm. Tonight, at moonrise, everything would change. Either we'd find a way to stop the war and expose Seraphina's lies, or we'd face the final confrontation that had been building since the moment I'd been rejected and reborn. Whatever happens, I whispered against Raven's chest, I'm glad I found you. We found each other, he corrected. And I'm not letting go, no matter what comes next. As if summoned by his words, a scout came running toward us from the forest edge, his face pale with urgency. Alpha, he called breathlessly. We've got incoming. 30 vehicles, maybe more, approaching from the southern pass. Seraphina? Raven asked. No, sir. The scout's voice was grim. These ones are flying blood moon colors. And they're not slowing down. The final battle was coming whether we were ready or not. And as the sound of engines echoed across the valley, I felt my wolf rise to the surface, ready to fight for the family we'd built and the future we'd chosen. The war for the heart of the werewolf world was about to begin. Chapter 9. The Blood Moon vehicle stopped just outside arrow range, forming a perfect semicircle that blocked the main exit from our valley. But this time, Damien hadn't come for negotiation. The wolves that emerged from those vehicles moved with military precision, their weapons gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. 60 combatants, maybe more, Marcus reported from his position at the command post we'd hastily established. They're setting up for a siege, not a quick strike. He's waiting for something, I said, studying the enemy positions through binoculars. If he wanted to attack immediately, he'd have done it by now. He's waiting for moonrise, Sage said grimly. The blood ritual Dev's spirits warned us about. It has to be performed during the full moon for maximum power. I glanced up at the sky, where the moon was already visible despite the daylight, growing stronger with each passing hour. We had maybe 6 hours before the lunar peak, 6 hours to either stop this madness or prepare for the fight of our lives. The projection ritual, Raven said, understanding immediately. We do it now before he can complete whatever he has planned. In broad daylight? Sage looked uncertain. The bond sharing will be weaker. But it might be strong enough to get word to the Alliance forces. I finished. To let them know I'm alive and that this war is based on a lie. It's risky, Luna Arya warned. If the projection fails, you'll have exhausted your power reserves right when we need them most. And if we don't try, more wolves die while Damien positions himself for whatever endgame he has planned. I looked around at the faces of the wolves who'd become my family, seeing fear and determination in equal measure. I won't let that happen. Raven's hand found mine, the mating bond immediately flaring to life between us. What do you need me to do? Trust me, I said simply. And don't fight the connection, no matter how overwhelming it gets. We moved to the center of the settlement, where the other pack members formed a protective circle around us. The afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, but I could feel the moon's pull growing stronger with each passing moment. Remember, Sage instructed, the projection will only last as long as you can maintain perfect synchronization. The moment one of you resists or tries to control the flow of power, the connection will break. I nodded, then turned to face Raven. His amber eyes held complete trust, absolute faith in my ability to make this work. The confidence he had in me was both humbling and terrifying. Ready? I asked. Always, he replied. I reached out with my ancient bloodline abilities, feeling for the threads of connection that linked all wolves across vast distances. It was like trying to see in a fog at first, but gradually, the bonds became visible, silver threads stretching from our valley to pack territories hundreds of miles away. I can see them, I breathed. The connections between all the packs. Show me, Raven said, and I felt him opening his mind to mine through the mating bond. The rush of sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, I wasn't just Lyra standing in a mountain valley. I was part of something vast and interconnected, a web of relationships and loyalties that spanned the entire continent. Through Raven's enhanced alpha senses, I could feel the emotions of wolves I'd never met, could sense the fear and anger that Seraphina's war had stirred up. There, I said, focusing on a cluster of threads that led toward the conflict zones. The Moonlight Bay Pack. They're under siege. Without conscious thought, I projected my presence along those silver connections, using Raven's strength to amplify my own abilities. For a moment that felt like eternity, I existed in multiple places at once, standing in our peaceful valley and manifesting in the war-torn territories where wolves were dying based on lies. Through the projection, I spoke to the Alliance forces surrounding the Bay Pack's territory. I am Lyra Blackthorne, and I am very much alive. The war you're fighting is based on deception. Stand down and investigate the truth before more blood is shed. The shock and confusion that rippled through the pack bonds was like a physical force. Wolves who'd been preparing to attack suddenly found themselves questioning everything they'd been told. But the effort was draining me faster than I'd expected. I felt Raven's strength flowing into me through the mating bond, his power becoming mine as we shared the burden of maintaining the projection. "Hold on," he whispered, his voice strained with effort. "I've got you." I pushed the projection further, reaching toward the Silverwood Pack territory where Kale was being held prisoner. This connection was more difficult. Our severed bond made it harder to establish contact, but finally, I managed to manifest in what looked like a stone cell. Kale was there, chained to the wall with silver manacles that prevented him from shifting. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow with despair. When my projection appeared, he thought he was hallucinating. "Lyra?" His voice cracked. "But they said you were dead." "I'm very much alive," I told him. "And you need to know that Seraphina has been lying about everything. She's using your pack's resources to wage a war that serves the Blood Moon clan's interests." "I don't understand. Your father made deals with Damien years ago," I explained quickly, feeling the projection beginning to weaken. "Seraphina is his agent. She manipulated our rejection, faked my death, and now she's trying to destabilize the entire alliance structure." Kale's face went white with understanding. "The war. She said it was to avenge your murder. It's to draw me out of hiding so Damien can complete a blood ritual during tonight's full moon." The projection flickered as my strength began to fail. "You have to stop her, Kale. You're the only one with the authority to end this. The silver chains are probably enchanted to suppress your alpha abilities. But if you can break free during the moon's peak, when all wolves are at their strongest." I let the implication hang between us. "Lyra." His voice was desperate. "I'm sorry. For everything I put you through, for the pain I caused." "I know," I said gently. "And I forgive you. But right now, we need to focus on stopping this war before more innocent wolves die." The projection began to collapse, my consciousness snapping back to my own body like a rubber band. I gasped, staggering against Raven as the full weight of exhaustion hit me. "Did it work?" I asked weakly. "Look around," he said, gesturing toward the settlement. Every wolf in the valley was staring at us with expressions of awe and disbelief. But more importantly, the communication devices scattered throughout the command post were buzzing with incoming messages. "Alliance forces are confirming the projection," Marcus reported, his voice filled with wonder. "They're standing down from active combat and demanding to speak with Seraphina Nightshade directly." "And the Silverwood Pack?" I asked. "Radio silence," Luna Aria said grimly. "But that might be a good sign. If Kale is attempting to regain control." A new voice cut through the celebration. Cold, mocking, and far too close for comfort. "Impressive display, my dear Lyra." We spun around to find Damien Bloodmoon standing at the edge of the settlement, flanked by a dozen of his most dangerous-looking warriors. Somehow, they'd gotten past our sentries without raising an alarm. "How did you," Raven started, "get past your defenses?" Damien's smile was predatory. "Simple. While you were all focused on that touching little light show, my wolves used the tunnels your own scouts showed us during their patrol reports. My heart sank. We'd been so focused on the obvious threat that we'd missed the subtle infiltration. "What do you want, Damien?" I asked, forcing myself to stand upright despite my exhaustion. "What I've always wanted. You, willingly or otherwise." His blood-red eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Though I must admit, your little projection stunt has saved me considerable trouble. Now I know exactly how powerful you really are." "The ritual," Sage breathed. He needed to see her abilities in action to calibrate whatever spell he's planning. "Very good," Damien said approvingly. "The blood ritual requires a precise understanding of the subject's power levels. Too little preparation, and it fails. Too much, and it destroys the very abilities I'm trying to harvest." "Harvest?" The word came out as a snarl. "Oh yes, my dear. Did you think I wanted to mate with you for romantic reasons?" His laugh was like broken glass. "The ancient bloodline abilities can be transferred from one wolf to another through specific ritualistic means. Your death during the full moon will give me access to power that hasn't been seen in centuries." The casual way he discussed murdering me for my abilities sent ice through my veins. This wasn't about prophecy or alliances or even conquest. It was about raw power and the lengths some wolves would go to obtain it. Over my dead body, Raven growled, his alpha presence flaring as he positioned himself between me and Damien. "Actually, that can be arranged," Damien replied pleasantly. "Though I'd prefer to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Surrender Lyra to me willingly, and the rest of you can live. Resist, and I'll turn this peaceful little valley into a graveyard." "Never," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had left. "I'll die before I let you use my abilities to hurt innocent wolves." "Die you will," Damien agreed. "The only question is how many of your friends join you." Around us, I could feel the pack preparing for battle. Weapons being readied, defensive positions being taken, final goodbyes being whispered. These wolves, my family, were preparing to die for me, and the weight of that responsibility was almost crushing. "There is another option," Sage said suddenly. "Something that would make the blood ritual impossible to complete." "What are you talking about?" Damien's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "The mating bond," Sage said, her voice gaining confidence. "If Lyra and Raven complete the soul bond ritual before moonrise, her abilities will be permanently shared between them. You can't harvest power that belongs to two wolves simultaneously." "The soul bond." I looked at her in confusion. "I thought what we did with the projection was—" "That was just the beginning," Sage explained quickly. "True soul bonding requires a blood exchange and vows sworn under the moon's light. Once complete, you become two halves of the same spiritual entity. Your abilities, your life force, everything becomes shared." "And if one dies?" Raven asked quietly. "Both die," Sage admitted. "But the power can never be separated or stolen." Damien's face had gone white with fury. "You're bluffing. The soul bond is a myth." "Is it?" Sage pulled out an ancient-looking book, its pages yellowed with age. "The ritual is described in detail right here, in the original writings of Sarah Moonweaver herself." Hope flickered in my chest, but it came with a terrible price. If we completed the soul bond, Raven and I would be connected for life in the most literal sense possible. If anything happened to me, he would die too. "I can't ask you to do that," I whispered to him. "The risk—" "Isn't a risk," he interrupted firmly. "It's a choice. And I choose you, Lyra. In this life and whatever comes after." The love in his voice was so pure, so absolute, that it took my breath away. Here was a man willing to tie his very soul to mine, knowing that it meant sharing not just my abilities but my dangers. "The moon is almost at its peak," Sage said urgently. "If we're going to do this, it has to be now." "Stop them," Damien snarled, but his warriors hesitated. Even they could sense the power building in the air, the ancient magic that surrounded rituals older than recorded history. "I love you," I said to Raven, the words carrying weight that went beyond mere emotion. "I love you too," he replied. "Forever and always." And as the full moon reached its zenith, bathing the valley in silver light, we began the ritual that would either save us all or doom us together.
Chapter 10.
The soul bond ritual was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. As Sage guided us through the ancient words, I felt the barriers between Raven and me dissolving, our very essences beginning to merge in ways that transcended physical reality. By moon and star, by earth and flame, we spoke in unison, our voices harmonizing as if we'd been meant to say these words together. We bind our souls as one eternal name. The silver moonlight seemed to intensify around us, and I could feel power, real, ancient magic, responding to our call. This wasn't just ceremony or symbolism. This was transformation at the deepest possible level. "Blood of my blood," Raven said, drawing a small knife across his palm and offering it to me. "Heart of my heart," I replied, making my own cut and pressing our wounds together. The moment our blood mingled, the world exploded into sensation. I felt Raven's strength flowing into me, but more than that, I felt his memories, his emotions, his very thoughts becoming part of my own consciousness. And through our joined awareness, I could sense his wonder as he experienced my abilities for the first time. Soul of my soul, we finished together, until the stars burn cold and the moon falls dark. The power that erupted from our joined hands was visible to every wolf in the valley, a column of silver light that shot skyward like a beacon. I felt my ancient bloodline abilities expanding, deepening, becoming something entirely new as they merged with Raven's alpha strength. "No!" Damien's scream of rage was audible even over the magical resonance. "You don't understand what you've done. That power could have reshaped the world." "It will," I said, standing with new confidence as the ritual completed itself. "Just not the way you wanted." The soul bond had changed everything. Through our connection, I could feel every wolf in 100-mile radius, could sense their emotions, their loyalties, their deepest fears and hopes. But more than that, I could feel the bonds between them, the connections that made them families, packs, communities. "The network," I breathed, understanding dawning. "I can feel the entire alliance network." "We can feel it," Raven corrected, his voice filled with the same wonder. "Together." And through that shared awareness, I finally understood what the prophecy had really meant. The twice-bonded wolf wasn't meant to unite the packs through conquest or political maneuvering. She was meant to strengthen the bonds that already existed, to help wolves remember that they were stronger together than apart. "Enough of this mystical nonsense," Damien snarled, gesturing to his warriors. "Kill them all. If I can't have her power, no one can." But as his wolves moved to attack, something extraordinary happened. The refugees who'd found sanctuary in our valley, wolves who'd been rejected, outcast, forgotten by their birth packs, stepped forward to defend their new home. Not as individuals, but as a unified force connected by bonds of choice rather than blood. The battle that erupted was unlike any conflict in werewolf history. It wasn't territory or resources being fought over, it was the right to choose your own family, your own destiny, your own future. Through the soul bond, Raven and I fought as one entity. When he engaged a group of attackers on the left flank, I provided covering fire from the right. When I was overwhelmed by 3 wolves at once, his strength flowed through me, allowing me to break free. We were no longer 2 separate fighters. We were a single force with twice the power and twice the tactical awareness. "This is impossible," Damien said, staring at us with something approaching fear. "No bond should be that strong." "This isn't just a mating bond," Sage called out as she helped evacuate the non-combatants. "It's a soul bond forged in love and tempered by sacrifice. That's power you'll never understand." The tide of battle began to turn as our defenders pressed their advantage. But I could see that Damien had one final card to play, a ritual circle he'd carved into the earth while we were distracted by the fighting. "If I can't have your power through the blood ritual," he called out, pulling a curved dagger from his belt, "I'll take it through force. The soul bond makes you stronger, but it also makes you vulnerable. Kill one, kill both." He lunged toward Raven with inhuman speed, the enchanted blade aimed directly at his heart. Time seemed to slow as I realized I'd never reach them in time to intervene. But I didn't need to. "Duck," I said through our bond, and Raven dropped to one knee without question. The blade whistled over his head as I channeled our shared power into a projection that manifested directly behind Damien. My ethereal form grabbed his wrist, disrupting his attack just long enough for Raven to recover and disarm him. "It's over, Damien," Raven said, holding the enchanted dagger at the fallen Alpha's throat. "Surrender now, and we'll let you live." "Over?" Damien laughed, but there was madness in the sound. "You think this ends with my defeat? I'm just one wolf among many who believe in the old ways. The strong ruling the weak, power taking what it wants." "Maybe," I said, kneeling beside him. "But you're also the last of a dying breed. The world is changing, whether you want it to or not." To prove my point, I reached out through the Alliance network, sending a pulse of connection to every pack within range. Not to control or manipulate, but simply to remind them of what they shared: family bonds, mutual protection, the strength that came from standing together. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Pack after pack sent back their own pulse of connection, their own commitment to the Alliance. From the mountains to the desert, from the forest to the coast, wolves were choosing unity over isolation, cooperation over conquest. "Do you feel that?" I asked Damien. "That's the future. Not perfect, not without conflict, but based on choice rather than force." His blood-red eyes were wide, with something that might have been understanding. "The prophecy. You really did unite them." "We did," I corrected. "All of us, together." As the last of Damien's warriors laid down their weapons, accepting surrender rather than pointless death, I felt a new presence entering the valley. A familiar one that made my heart skip, with equal parts hope and anxiety. Kale Ravencrest emerged from the forest, his clothes torn and his silver manacles broken. Behind him came a mix of Shadowmere and Silverwood wolves, their faces grim but determined. "Seraphina's under arrest," he announced without preamble. "Her father, too." It turns out they were keeping records of their communications with the Blood Moon clan, and Elder Morrison was very forthcoming with information once he realized the game was up. "The war?" Luna Arya asked. "Ended the moment the Alliance forces received Lyra's projection. Most of the mercenary packs withdrew when they realized they weren't getting paid." Kale's storm-gray eyes found mine across the battlefield. "The only casualties in the last 6 hours were wolves who refused to stand down when ordered." Relief flooded through me. "Through us," I corrected, feeling Raven's matching emotion through the soul bond. The war was over. The truth had come out, and somehow, we'd all survived. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build something better," Kale said simply. "The Alliance is already discussing formal recognition of sanctuary territories like this one. Places where wolves can find new families when their birth packs fail them." "And Damien?" "Will face judgment from the Council," Luna Arya said firmly. "Though I suspect exile to the frozen territories might be a more fitting punishment than death." As the various leaders began discussing logistics and legal proceedings, I found myself standing apart from the chaos, watching the sun rise over our valley. The moon was setting on the opposite horizon, its job done for another cycle. "No regrets?" Raven asked quietly, joining me at the edge of the settlement. I considered the question seriously. 24 hours ago, I'd been a different person entirely, heartbroken, lost, unsure of my place in the world. Now I was soul-bonded to an alpha I'd known for less than a week, responsible for abilities I barely understood, and apparently destined to help reshape werewolf society. "None," I said, meaning it completely. "You, only that it took us so long to find each other." His arm slipped around my waist, and I felt the soul bond settle into a warm, constant presence in the back of my mind. "Think we can handle whatever comes next?" I looked around at the wolves cleaning up the battlefield, refugees and Alliance members working side by side, former enemies helping tend to wounded fighters, families being reunited after the chaos of war. It wasn't perfect, and there would certainly be more challenges ahead. But it was real, built on choices rather than obligations, strengthened by love rather than fear. Together? I said, leaning into his embrace. I think we can handle anything. And as the morning sun painted the sky in shades of gold and possibility, I felt my wolf settle into contentment for the first time in my life. I was exactly where I belonged, with exactly the right person, building exactly the kind of future worth fighting for. The prophecy was complete, but somehow it felt like everything was just beginning. Chapter 11. 3 weeks after the Battle of Cascade Ridge, as the historians were already calling it, our settlement had transformed into something I never could have imagined. What had once been a quiet sanctuary for rejected wolves was now the bustling headquarters of the Continental Alliance Network, with representatives from over 40 packs working together to establish new protocols for inter-pack cooperation. The medical supply chain is finally stabilized, Dr. Sage reported during our morning briefing, looking remarkably pleased for someone who'd been working 18-hour days since the crisis ended. We've got field hospitals established in 12 territories, and the trauma counseling program is showing real results. What about the refugee resettlement? I asked, reviewing the latest reports from our expanding network of sanctuary sites. Better than expected, Marcus replied, his security expertise proving invaluable in the logistics of moving displaced wolves to new homes. 87 wolves have found permanent pack placements, and another 120 have opted to stay in sanctuary territories while they decide their next steps. The numbers were encouraging, but they represented so much more than statistics. Each displaced wolf was someone who'd been given a second chance, a new family, a fresh start. The ripple effects of our victory over Damien were spreading farther than anyone had anticipated. There's something else, Luna Aria said, her expression shifting to something more serious. The council has reached a decision about Damien's punishment. The fallen alpha had been held in custody since his capture, his case debated endlessly by legal experts and pack leaders. Some wanted execution for his crimes. Others argued for rehabilitation. Most had settled on permanent exile as the most practical solution. And Raven asked, his hand finding mine under the conference table. Even 3 weeks into our soul bond, the constant awareness of his presence was still a source of comfort and strength. Exiled to the northern wastes, with magical restraints to prevent him from using his war magic abilities, Luna Aria said. He'll be stripped of his alpha status and forbidden from forming new pack bonds. Essentially, he'll live out his days as a lone wolf in one of the harshest territories on the continent. That seems... I paused, searching for the right word. Fitting. The council also wanted me to extend their formal thanks, Luna Aria continued. What you two accomplished, the soul bond, the network expansion, the new alliance structure, it's unprecedented in werewolf history. Through our bond, I felt Raven's mix of pride and humility. We'd stumbled into our destiny more than chosen it, but the results spoke for themselves. The pack system was stronger than it had been in centuries, built on mutual support rather than territorial competition. What about Seraphina and her father? I asked. House arrest pending full investigation. Kale's voice came from the doorway as he entered the conference room. Though given the evidence we've uncovered, they'll likely face permanent exile as well. It still felt strange, seeing Kale in our territory, working alongside the wolves who'd become my new family. The awkwardness of our severed bond had faded over the past weeks, replaced by something that felt almost like friendship. Not the deep connection we'd once shared, but a mutual respect built on shared experiences and hard-won wisdom. How are you holding up? I asked him quietly as the others continued their discussions. Better than I expected, he admitted. Cleaning house in the Shadowmere Pack has been illuminating. You wouldn't believe how many policies and traditions were actually blood moon manipulation tactics. Are you rebuilding from scratch? More or less. We're implementing some of the sanctuary protocols you've developed here, creating space for wolves who don't fit traditional pack hierarchies, focusing on chosen family rather than just bloodlines. He paused, studying my face. I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me what real strength looks like. For walking away when I was too stubborn to see your worth. for forgiving me even when I didn't deserve it. His storm-gray eyes were sincere. I know I can never take back the pain I caused, but I hope someday I can be the kind of leader you always believed I could be. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside, not the sounds of conflict, but excited voices and running feet. Through the window, I could see wolves gathering in the central courtyard, all of them looking up at something in the sky. "What now?" Raven muttered, but his tone was amused rather than concerned. We filed outside to find the entire settlement staring at a massive golden eagle circling overhead. But this wasn't just any bird. I could sense the supernatural power radiating from it even from a distance. "Messenger from the Elder Council," Sage said with reverence. "I haven't seen one of those in 30 years. The eagle descended gracefully, shifting mid-flight into an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. Her clothes marked her as one of the ancient bloodlines, the original families who'd helped establish werewolf society in the New World. "I am Elder Whitehawk," she announced, her voice carrying easily across the gathered crowd. "I bring greetings from the Continental Elder Council and an invitation that has not been extended in over 200 years. An invitation from the Elder Council? I felt Raven's surprise through our bond, matching my own confusion. The Elders were legend, the oldest and most powerful wolves on the continent, who emerged from their hidden sanctuaries only during times of great crisis or change. An invitation to what? Luna Arya asked, speaking for all of us. "To the gathering of souls," Elder Whitehawk replied, and the gasps from the crowd were audible. "The ancient ceremony where new leaders are formally recognized and new alliances are blessed by the old magic itself." I'd heard stories about the gathering, but I'd always assumed they were myths. According to legend, it was a ritual performed only when the werewolf world underwent fundamental change, the kind of transformation that happened maybe once in a generation. "When?" Raven asked. 3 nights hence, at the sacred grove in the heart of the Continental Preserve." Elder Whitehawk's ancient eyes fixed on us with laser intensity. "The Council wishes to formally recognize the soul bond between Lyra Blackthorne and Raven Stormhowl, and to establish the Cascade Ridge Alliance as an official branch of werewolf governance." The implications were staggering. Official recognition would mean resources, legal authority, the ability to expand our sanctuary network on a continental scale. But it would also mean responsibility, scrutiny, and expectations that I wasn't sure we were ready to meet. "What would be expected of us?" I asked. "To continue doing what you're already doing," Elder Whitehawk said with a slight smile. "To provide sanctuary for those who need it, to strengthen the bonds between packs, to serve as an example of what werewolf society can become when it chooses cooperation over conquest. And if we refuse? Then you continue doing what you're already doing, just without official support." Her expression grew more serious. "But I should warn you, the world is watching what happens here. Your success has inspired wolves across multiple continents. Refusing the Council's recognition might send the wrong message about your commitment to the changes you've started." "No pressure at all," I thought wryly, feeling Raven's matching amusement through our bond. "We need time to discuss this," Raven said diplomatically. "Of course. I'll remain in the area until you're ready to give your answer." Elder Whitehawk gestured, and her clothes shifted back into feathers as she resumed eagle form. "But I should mention, the gathering will proceed whether you attend or not. The question is whether you want to shape what comes next or simply react to it." As the elder eagle disappeared into the forest, I found myself surrounded by excited pack members, all of them talking at once about the implications of what we'd just witnessed. "This is incredible," Marcus said. "Official recognition from the Elder Council? Do you know what that means for our funding applications?" "It means legitimacy," Luna Arya added. "The ability to negotiate as equals with the major packs, to establish formal treaties." "It also means target practice," Sage warned quietly. "There are still wolves out there who oppose everything we represent. Making ourselves more visible makes us more vulnerable." The discussions continued around us, but I found myself stepping away from the crowd, needing space to process what had just happened. Raven followed, understanding my need for quiet without needing to be asked. "What do you think?" he said once we were alone. "I think 3 weeks ago, I was a rejected mate with nowhere to go," I replied. "Now I'm being invited to ceremonies that most wolves think are mythology." Having second thoughts? I considered the question seriously. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of change, growth, and responsibility that I'd never expected to handle. But as I looked around at the settlement we'd built, at wolves from dozens of different packs working together, at families that had formed across traditional bloodlines, at the beginning of something truly revolutionary, I felt a deep sense of rightness. "No," I said finally. "No second thoughts. But I am terrified of screwing this up." "Good," Raven said, pulling me into his arms. "The moment we stop being afraid of making mistakes is the moment we stop growing." Very wise, Alpha Stormhowl. I learned from the best, Lyra Blackthorne. The title still felt strange, but I was getting used to it. Luna not because I'd made it an alpha, but because I'd proven myself capable of leading, of making the hard decisions that protected those under my care. "So," I said, leaning into his warmth, "think we're ready to address the Elder Council? Together?" His arms tightened around me. "I think we're ready for anything." And as we stood there watching our pack, our family, celebrate the promise of official recognition, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. The journey that had started with heartbreak and rejection had led to something more beautiful than I'd ever dared to dream. "The gathering it is," I said. But even as I made the decision, I couldn't shake the feeling that our greatest challenges were still ahead of us. Chapter 12. The sacred grove was unlike anywhere I'd ever been. Ancient trees stretched toward the sky like cathedral pillars, their branches so thick they blocked out most of the sunlight. The air itself seemed to hum with power, old magic that predated modern pack structures by thousands of years. "Stay close," Elder Whitehawk advised as she led our delegation through the winding paths. "The grove has protections that can disorient those who aren't prepared for them." I understood what she meant almost immediately. The deeper we went into the forest, the more the normal rules seemed to bend. Distances that should have taken minutes to cover stretched on for what felt like hours. Paths that had been clear moments before vanished behind us, replaced by walls of impenetrable undergrowth. "It's testing us," Sage murmured, her healer's sensitivity to magical energies making her particularly attuned to what was happening. "The grove is determining whether we're worthy to enter the sacred space." "Worthy how?" I asked, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt the answer. The old magic was reading us, our intentions, our commitment, our willingness to put the greater good ahead of personal ambition. Through the soul bond, I felt Raven's steady determination, his absolute conviction that we were here for the right reasons. The grove must have sensed it too, because the path ahead suddenly cleared, revealing a circular clearing ringed by the most massive trees I'd ever seen. "Welcome to the heart of the grove," Elder Whitehawk said formally. "The sacred space where our ancestors first established the laws that govern werewolf society." The clearing was already occupied by figures that made my breath catch. These weren't just pack leaders or alliance representatives. These were the elders themselves, wolves whose bloodlines stretched back to the founding of the continent. Their combined presence was overwhelming, like standing in a room full of living legends. Lyra Blackthorne and Raven Stormhowl called a voice from the center of the gathering. "Approach and be recognized." We walked forward, hand in hand, feeling the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on us. At the center of the clearing stood an altar of white stone, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change when I wasn't looking directly at them. "You have been called here," the Elder Council's speaker continued, "because your actions have fundamentally altered the course of werewolf history. The soul bond you forged, the alliance network you established, the sanctuary system you created, these innovations represent the most significant evolution in our society since the original pack laws were written." "We're honored by your recognition," Raven said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Honor is earned through action, not given through ceremony," another elder said. "The question before us tonight is whether you are prepared to accept the responsibilities that come with the power you've claimed." "What responsibilities?" I asked. The obligation to serve not just your own pack, but all wolves who seek sanctuary from injustice. The duty to mediate disputes between territories that might otherwise lead to war. The burden of making decisions that will affect thousands of lives. The elder's ancient eyes seemed to see straight through to my soul. Are you prepared for that burden? I thought about the refugees who'd found new homes through our network. The wolves who discovered families among people who weren't their blood relatives. The conflicts that had been resolved through negotiation rather than violence. We are, I said, meaning it completely. Then let the gathering begin. What followed was unlike any ceremony I'd ever witnessed. Each elder came forward to place their hands on the stone altar, and with each touch, the carved symbols glowed brighter. I could feel power building in the air, not the raw, chaotic energy of battle magic, but something deeper and more fundamental. This is the weaving, Elder Whitehawk explained quietly. The process by which new threads are added to the tapestry of werewolf law and tradition. By the authority vested in us by the first laws, the speaker announced, we formally recognize the soul bond between Lyra Blackthorne and Raven Stormhowl as a legitimate union blessed by the old magic. The altar erupted in silver light, and I felt something change deep within the soul bond itself. It was as if our connection had been officially registered in some cosmic registry, acknowledged by forces older than memory. We further recognize the Cascade Ridge Alliance as an autonomous governance structure, with full authority to establish sanctuary territories and mediate interpack disputes. More light, more power flowing through the clearing. I could feel the magical recognition settling into place, giving our alliance the kind of legitimacy that couldn't be challenged or revoked. And finally, the speaker said, their voice taking on an even more formal tone, we name Lyra Blackthorne as the first Luna of the Continental Alliance, with all the rights and responsibilities that title entails. The words hit me like a physical blow. First Luna? I'd expected recognition, maybe some kind of official position within the alliance structure. But this? What does that mean? I asked. It means you speak for every wolf who doesn't have a voice, Elder Whitehawk explained. Refugees, outcasts, wolves who've been rejected by their birth packs. It means your word carries the same weight as any pack alphas, and your sanctuary territories are considered sovereign soil. It also means, another elder added, that you are now personally responsible for maintaining the balance of power between the traditional pack system and the new alliance structure. A job that will likely make you enemies among those who profit from the old ways. No pressure at all, I thought, but this time there was no humor in it. The magnitude of what I was being asked to accept was overwhelming. I need a moment, I said. The elders nodded respectfully, stepping back to give me space to process. But through the soul bond, I felt Raven's unwavering support, his absolute confidence in my ability to handle whatever came next. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. Whatever responsibilities come with that title, we'll face them together. But it's my choice to make. Yes, he agreed. And I'll support whatever you decide. I looked around the sacred clearing, at the ancient trees that had witnessed the birth of werewolf civilization, at the elders who represented centuries of wisdom and tradition. Then I thought about the wolves back at Cascade Ridge, the refugees who'd found new families, the outcasts who discovered their worth, the broken bonds that had been healed through love and acceptance. I accept, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the clearing. All of it. The title, the responsibilities, the burdens. But I accept them on one condition. Name it, the speaker said. This can't be about me, or even about us. I gestured toward Raven. The moment this becomes about personal power or political advantage, we've failed. The sanctuary system only works if it remains true to its original purpose, providing safety and support for those who need it most. Agreed, the Elder Council said in unison, their voices creating harmonies that seemed to resonate through the very ground beneath our feet. The ceremony concluded with a ritual I'd never heard of, the binding of purposes. Each elder contributed a thread of their own power to create a new kind of bond, one that connected me not to individuals, but to the principles I'd sworn to uphold. If I ever betrayed those principles, the bond would break, stripping me of the authority I'd been given. It's done, Elder Whitehawk said as the magical energy settled. You are now officially the first Luna of the Continental Alliance, with all the protections and obligations that entails. As we made our way back through the grove's winding paths, I felt the weight of my new position settling around me like a mantle. But alongside the responsibility came something else, a sense of purpose that went deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. How do you feel? Raven asked as we emerged from the forest into starlight. Terrified, I said honestly. But also, right, like this is what I was meant to do. Good, he said, pulling me close. Because I have a feeling we're going to change the world. We already have, I replied. Now we just have to make sure it sticks. And as we headed home to our settlement full of wolves who'd chosen family over bloodline, love over tradition, hope over fear, I felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but somehow, it felt like our real story was just beginning. Epilogue. 1 year later. The first anniversary of the Battle of Cascade Ridge fell on a crisp autumn morning that painted the mountain valley in shades of gold and crimson. Our settlement had grown into a small city, with permanent buildings replacing the temporary shelters and a network of paths connecting dozens of satellite communities. The morning reports, Marcus said, settling into his chair at our weekly leadership meeting. His title was officially Director of Operations now, but he was still the same steady, reliable wolf who'd helped us through our darkest hours. Let's hear the good news first, I said, sipping my coffee and enjoying the momentary calm before another day of solving impossible problems. Sanctuary applications are up 30% this quarter, Dr. Sage reported with satisfaction. We've successfully placed over 2,000 refugees in permanent homes, and the trauma recovery programs are showing a 92% success rate. The legal framework is solidifying nicely, added our newest council member, a sharp-minded wolf named Justice Clearwater who'd helped us navigate the complex process of establishing sanctuary law. 3 more states have officially recognized our territorial sovereignty, and the federal government is considering legislation that would protect supernatural refugees. What about the resistance movements? Raven asked, his tone carefully neutral. Dwindling but persistent, Marcus admitted. The Sons of the Old Ways attempted to infiltrate the Oregon sanctuary last month, but our security protocols caught them before they could cause damage. They're mostly reduced to propaganda campaigns now. The Sons of the Old Ways were the latest incarnation of the anti-alliance movement, wolves who believed the traditional pack hierarchy was being destroyed by our sanctuary system. They'd been responsible for 3 attempted attacks in the past year, though none had succeeded in causing serious harm. Any word from the Blood Moon remnants? I asked. Radio silence for 6 months now, Marcus reported. Last intelligence suggested they'd scattered to remote territories, trying to rebuild their power base. But without Damien's war magic to unite them, they're just another group of disorganized extremists. The news was encouraging, but I'd learned not to let my guard down completely. The werewolf world was vast, and there were always wolves who preferred the old ways of doing things. What's on the agenda for today? I asked. Site inspection for the new medical facility, followed by the orientation session for this month's refugee group, Sage said. Then you have a conference call with the European Alliance about establishing cross-continental protocols. And tonight is the anniversary celebration, Raven added with a smile, complete with Marcus's famous elk stew and whatever musical chaos the younger pack members have planned. I laughed, remembering last year's celebration, which had involved an impromptu talent show that lasted until 3 in the morning. The sense of family that had developed in our extended pack was unlike anything I'd experienced in traditional pack structures. Before we adjourn, Justice said, there's one more item. I received a formal communication from the Shadowmere pack this morning. My coffee cup paused halfway to my lips. From Kale? Actually, from their new Luna. Apparently, Alpha Ravencrest completed his mating bond with someone from the Moonlight Bay pack, a healer named Elena Riverside. Justice's expression was carefully neutral as she delivered news that could have been awkward. Instead, I felt only happiness through the soul bond, reflected back from Raven's genuine pleasure at the news. Any residual complicated feelings about Kale had long since been resolved. That's wonderful, I said, meaning it completely. I hope they're very happy together. The formal message was a request for a mutual defense treaty. Justice continued. It seems the new Shadowmere leadership wants to officially ally themselves with our network. What's your recommendation? Accept, with standard terms and monitoring protocols. Kale has made genuine changes to their pack structure, and Elena Riverside has an excellent reputation for fairness and compassion.
Done, I said.
Draft the agreement and send it for review. As the council meeting dispersed and everyone headed off to their daily responsibilities, I found myself standing alone in the conference room, looking out at the settlement we'd built. Children played in the central courtyard, wolf pups from a dozen different bloodlines, all growing up together as siblings rather than potential rivals. Their laughter carried on the mountain air like music. Regrets? Raven asked, joining me at the window. None, I said automatically, then paused to consider the question more seriously. Actually, that's not true. I regret that it took a rejection and a near war for me to find my purpose. I regret the wolves who died because of Seraphina's lies. I regret that there are still wolves out there who can't see the beauty of what we've built. But not the choices we made? Never. I turned to face him, still marveling at how the soul bond had only grown stronger over the past year. You? I regret that I didn't meet you sooner, he said, pulling me into his arms. But I don't regret a single day since. The kiss that followed was interrupted by a commotion outside, not alarming this time, just the excited chatter that usually meant good news was spreading through the pack. What now? I asked, but I was smiling as I said it. Our lives had settled into a rhythm of controlled chaos that somehow worked perfectly for us. Alpha, Luna, called a young voice from the courtyard. Come quick. You need to see this. We hurried outside to find the entire settlement gathering around a group of travel-worn wolves who'd just arrived. But these weren't refugees seeking sanctuary. They were well-dressed, confident-looking individuals who carried themselves with the bearing of pack leaders. I am Alpha Patricia Moonstone of the Southern California Alliance, their leader announced. We've traveled 1,200 miles to formally request inclusion in your sanctuary network. My breath caught. The Southern California Alliance represented over 30 packs, making them one of the largest regional governments on the continent. If they were seeking alliance with us, we've been watching your success for the past year, Alpha Moonstone continued. The stability, the cooperation, the way you've managed to eliminate territorial conflicts while maintaining pack autonomy. We want to learn from your example. And we want to contribute to it, added another wolf. Our region has resources, funding, infrastructure, political connections that could help expand the sanctuary system to serve even more displaced wolves. I looked around at our pack, seeing the mixture of pride and determination on their faces. These wolves had taken a chance on an untested system, had helped build something unprecedented from nothing. Now their work was being recognized by some of the most powerful packs in North America. We'd be honored to discuss alliance terms, I said formally. But I should warn you, our system requires fundamental changes to traditional pack hierarchies. Refugees have full voting rights, interpack mating is encouraged, and leadership positions are earned through merit rather than bloodline. We understand, Alpha Moonstone said. And we're ready for those changes. The old ways aren't working anymore. It's time to try something better. As the impromptu negotiation began and wolves started pairing off to discuss details, I felt Raven's hand slip into mine, the soul bond humming with shared satisfaction. Think we can handle alliance with 30 more packs? He asked quietly. A year ago, I would have said it was impossible, I replied. Now, I think we can handle anything. Even if it means more late-night emergency councils and diplomatic crises? Even then. I squeezed his hand, feeling the solid warmth of our connection anchor me in the midst of yet another life-changing development. As long as we're doing it together. Always, he promised, and through the soul bond, I felt the absolute truth of his commitment. As the sun set over our mountain valley, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I watched wolves from different packs, different backgrounds, different stories, all working together to build something beautiful. The rejection that had shattered my world just over a year ago had led to the most fulfilling life I could have imagined. The prophecy spoke of a twice-bonded wolf who would unite the packs, but it had never specified how. I'd thought it would be through conquest or political maneuvering, through force of will or supernatural power. Instead, it had been through love. Love for the outcasts and the forgotten. Love for the idea that every wolf deserved a chance at happiness. Love for the possibility that families could be chosen rather than imposed. And most of all, love for the man whose soul was permanently intertwined with mine, whose strength had helped me become the leader I'd never known I could be. Ready for whatever comes next? Raven asked, echoing the question that had started our journey together. With you? Always, I replied. And as our pack, our family, celebrated another day of building the impossible, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them the same way we had everything else. Together. The end.